Hello and welcome to Lost Within Lost, the podcast where we are rewatching the 10 highest rated episodes of Lost. My name is Dan, and my controversial Lost opinion is that The Constant, while an entertaining piece of television, is not even in the top 10 of Lost episodes. Put that in your pipe and smoke monster it.
Hello, my name is Chris, and Dan, I'm going to need to see that list. Yes, hello again, and welcome to Lost Within Lost, the podcast where we are rewatching, recapping, and re-reviewing the 10 highest rated episodes of Lost. This week, Dan, we are all about the number one.
Number one.
We've made it to the end. It's our final episode.
It's our favourite episode.
Yes, our final and favorite, because we're going to be discussing the highest rated episode of Lost, which is, of course, drum roll, Dan.
It's The Constant. Everyone loves The Constant. It's the best
Yes,
episode. No
that's
one
right.
disagrees with that, except for both of us.
We will dig into that. Last week, Dan, we found out what your number one episode was. So that
Yes, indeed.
mystery has been solved. Would you like to just mention that again for everyone at home?
Yes. In case people are just tuning in for the final episode, they just said, "No, don't want to hear about anything else. Just The Constant for me. That's all I'm interested in." No. My number one episode was Through the Looking Glass, the season 3 finale.
That's right. A hard one to beat. That was my number two, because the other big mystery at the heart of this podcast is, of course, what is my number one, and we will find that out later in the episode. And Dan, without saying anything, do you have a guess? Do you have an episode in the back of your mind?
I'm really not sure. I know you've been a big Locke fan, so I've been trying to think of the Locke episodes. But you've had a couple of Locke episodes in there already, so I'm not sure how many you're going to squeeze in there. I guess the other possibility is maybe a Desmond episode, maybe a little bit of flashes before your eyes or something. If you're into this old time jumping nonsense. Who knows?
Well, if we will find out. I was wondering if maybe you fed my top 9 into ChatGPT and asked it what would make a logical number one.
Let me just do that quickly and see. Oh, it says Jack's tattoo episode is your number one episode. ChatGPT, always on the ball.
Way to ruin the episode. So by the time you listen to this, our complete top 10 lists will be up on the socials, so you can see them in all your glory. Now, before we get on to the big topic, the constant, there's also one more surprise that I have for you, Dan. I will be solving one more mystery. That this podcast itself has brought up some of its own mysteries, and one of those will be solved later in the podcast. So that's 2 mysteries.
Does Fiona secretly love time travel?
No, that is not a mystery. That is not a mystery at all. So shall we kick things off with a bit of homework, a bit of previously on Lost Within Lost?
Previously on Lost
Within
Lost.
We should probably talk about the new man in charge. We haven't brought this up.
No.
And I thought, what better place? This is canon, right? This was
definitely canon.
What was it, about 10, 12 minute sort of long short film that was on the season 6 DVD. I think this was the big exciting thing at the time, was that you'd get like an epilogue to the show if you bought the DVD, and it's on YouTube now. And just like Walt, who wouldn't simply not go away, he reappears again in this episode, because you actually get some Walt answers in this new man in charge. Were you hyped for this, Dan? I remember knowing about it.
Yeah, no, I got the Blu-ray set, my big box beloved set that now sits in a cupboard somewhere. And this was the first thing I popped in once I got it. Just like, got to see this epilogue. What's it all about? How many questions is it going to answer?
Yes,
a few. Got a few answers in there.
Yeah. I remember weird. Like, I'm like, is this just going to be an answer machine? Like, And also, what do they deem worthy of being answered? Like, that needs to be answered, versus those other crazy theories you guys might have. That's your headcanon. But this stuff, we can answer. So yeah, straight away you get an answer on the Hurley bird.
Mm.
That's just a bird in a cage.
Yep.
So mystery solved.
Yep.
I think that Pierre Chang it's in one of the videos with Pierre Chang in there.
I still reckon Hurley was teaching it how to talk back in the 70s.
It's probably your original theory of Walt is probably right, because that was something else I learnt today, was that all the dead birds, right? So birds follow magnetism. That's
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
what
Yeah.
helps them
Yeah,
fly
that's how they
north.
navigate.
So then that's right. Yeah, the navigation system. So when you drop this kid on the island and he's supercharged with more magnetism, all these birds start going
Yeah, that makes
nuts.
sense.
So yeah.
Let's go with that.
It also affects electromagnetism, also affects pregnant polar bears on the island, if you didn't know that.
Yep.
And there's another mystery solved around that weird room where Carl is being hidden.
Yeah.
It was an old brainwashing room where they would interrogate a hostile if one ever came
Across the
across.
fence. Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing in this little video was, the idea was that Ben, working on behalf of Hurley, going around and shutting down old Dharma stations and little jobs and things like that. But he visits Keith Johns. Who is Keith Johns? Well, that is Walt. Walt is now in the Santa Rosa Mental Health Institute, which is where Hurley was. That is just a weird and sad fate that
Yeah, it's not great.
no, he was a high school kid, and somewhere between the show ending and this story being told is that he's in there, and he
Had to
sees.
deal with a lot.
Oh, I know, and obviously he would be. It would be tough being him, but it was sad to learn that's where he'd ended up. But then he gets a visit from Ben, and he says to Ben, "Are you here to kidnap me?" Which is a great line.
Yep.
And Ben says, "I'm genuinely sorry about that." And then they get into a Dharma van with Hurley and presumably go to the island.
Yep. All new adventures.
Yeah, where I think what they're trying to say is, like, we know you're special. You're not. There's nothing wrong with you. You are special, and your destiny this whole time was to be part of the island story and maybe even take over from Hurley.
Yeah, and you just went through puberty like a few years before we really needed you to on the show.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Otherwise, that could have been his story. So thought it was worth mentioning that. If you've never seen it, it's on YouTube, and it's definitely worth a watch. Now, homework, Dan. Did you do any homework this week?
I did do a little bit of homework. I inspired by your many suggestions last week, I decided that, well, of all of those, I am a big fan of Tony Martin, and I thought I will watch me some Bad Eggs. Tony Martin directed, he wrote it. How bad can it be? Wasn't great.
No, you okay? Yeah.
I think my biggest problem with it is that I just don't think Mick Malloy's an actor. So that's a pretty major problem. I felt I was just this is just Mick Malloy pretending to be a cop. I found it really difficult to get past Mick Malloy being a cop. It was just a little bit too hard for me.
Yes, you can tell this is the film of a guy who's daydreamed about doing a cop thriller all his life, and he finally kind of gets to do it. And I guess they'd leverage the momentum of Crackerjack, because I guess if Mick was ever going to be able to act, it would be in a movie like that. And so there's lots of little things and Easter eggs that for like the absolute diehards to appreciate. But I guess, is it just, if you were to just show someone and say, hey, here's a cop thriller and a bit of a comedy, it might not be that good.
I think that was part of the problem with it. Like it was a very strange tone. Like part of it, like there were some great gags in there. And then there was also, people just shooting one another. Like, a chief of police is just betrayed and murdered. It's just like, where is this story going? What is the tone of this story? I found it just a little bit inconsistent, the tone of it all. It was fine, but it was not. I'm not sure I'm going to rush out and watch it again.
Yeah, I've watched it so many times, so just it's something where I'm just completely forgiving of it. No, it absolutely makes sense. That's good. Now, and how much deathmatch wrestling did you watch, Dan?
Oh, zero.
Zero. Okay.
A goose egg. A goose egg to go with bad eggs.
That's fair enough. And did you check out any of the slap downs, the Kermit the Frog one, or any of that sort of weird
Oh, I forgot
stuff?
about those. I forgot about those. I'll check them out. Well, next episode.
That's your homework until we get back together again.
Yeah.
So I watched some Columbo.
Ah,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, I remembered you saying that the 1970s stuff was the good stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's because I was fascinated to learn that from 71 to 78, that's the sort of, the original. And then, but then it's had multiple comebacks. It changed networks.
Yeah.
There's even stuff in the 2000s. But no, I wanted to find the best of the best from like that run, because I assume
Yeah.
that's what you're sort of nostalgic for, right?
Yeah. It's and I don't think I've seen every Columbo because there's so many of them, and they're all, and they're quite long. And I'm working my way through the DVDs, and I used to watch them as a kid
Okay.
every now and then. But
Yep.
yeah, who knew what order they came onto channel 10 or whatever they were on, 9, whatever.
You know what's really hard is that you look up Columbo on streaming, you Google it and it says to go to Amazon, and then there it is, but it's everything post 78.
Oh
And if you
no.
want to watch anything from 71 to 78, you've got to pay $4 an episode.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sure there's been a time where I've been at JB Hi-Fi and there's been like a collection of 100 DVD Columbo collection for nothing, right? But I was
Yeah.
like, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. So that is what I watched. So where I started was I asked ChatGPT. I was like, give me an episode of Columbo that features an actor from Lost.
Oh,
Because I thought maybe that, that'd be a great one to go
it
with,
would be
right?
fantastic. I assume none
Yeah.
existed. Did it make up one?
Dan, you assume too much about ChatGPT. It did. It gave me 3 suggestions. So
Okay.
it said, so I said, which actors from the TV show Lost have also appeared in the TV show Columbo? It says several actors from the TV show Lost have appeared in episodes of Columbo. Here are a few notable ones. Number 1, Michael Emerson from Lost. He appeared in the Columbo episode Murder by the Book from 1971, where he played a character named Donnie in a very early role before gaining fame. Now, that is the very first episode of Columbo.
Yeah.
I checked.
That's the Spielberg
He's not,
one.
Yeah, he's not in it. No,
No.
Michael Emerson he's a child in
Yes.
1971. The next suggestion is Daniel Day Kim. He appeared in the Columbo episode A Matter of Honor from 1976. No, he didn't. And then the third suggestion, it says William Mapother, all right? And we know that to be Ethan Rom,
Yes.
right? ChatGPT says William Mapother, brackets, Chris Franco in Lost. He was in the Columbo episode A Matter of Honor from 1976, playing a role alongside Daniel Day Kim. So ChatGPT,
It's terrible
absolutely no
technology,
help.
people. Don't use it. If there's anything you've learned from this entire podcast,
Yes.
do not
Yes.
use ChatGPT or any of its friends.
No, if it's the future and you are listening to this, we tried to tell you, we tried to warn you. So I had to do it the old manual way, and I thought, okay, I'll start with Locke's dad, Kevin Teige, right? So who are the older cast members? So he was in The $6 Million Man back in 1974. He was in an episode of that. He was in an episode of The Love Boat, but no Columbo.
No.
And then I was like, Sam Anderson, right? Bernard.
Yep.
He's an older guy. He was in an episode of Police Story from 1978, not Columbo. And then I realized he was in Perfect Strangers. Did you watch Perfect Strangers?
Yeah. Balky?
Yes, he was Mr. Gorpley. He was Balky's boss.
Okay.
Who was basically just racist to him for 38 episodes. Calling him
Sounds
an
like
idiot.
Perfect Strangers to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, can you picture it, Dan? A young Forrest Gump sitting on the front deck, the front porch of the house as a young child, as the principal comes out to the front, mopping his brow, having just visited with Sally Fields, Mrs. Gump.
I vaguely know the scene. I haven't seen Forrest Gump in a long time, but I know the scene.
Yes.
Is that Bernard?
That is Bernard the principal mopping his brow, and he says, "Your mother is
dog.
She's quite the woman," and then Forrest does the impression back to him of everything he'd just heard inside the house.
All right.
Very funny. So no Columbo. So then I went to Fionnuala Flanagan, who is Eloise,
Yep.
and she was in an episode of Perry Mason
Oh, that's
in
pretty close.
1973. Not Columbo.
Not Columbo.
The Bionic Woman, not the
Oh,
Bionic
okay.
Man, but the Bionic Woman in 1976. And then in one of my favorite things, my introduction to Star Wars. How awful is this, Dan? I love Star Wars because I watched Caravan of Courage,
Caravan
the
of
very first
Courage.
thing. Yes, that was my entry into the world of Star Wars.
We've all got to start
Otherwise
somewhere.
called. Yes. Now, is that no longer canon? Is that
I don't think it was ever canon.
no?
Maybe it is. I don't know.
It was called
Maybe it is
Ewok
canon.
Adventure.
I have no idea. I know I have not seen it since 1982 or whenever it first came out.
Real okay, that's interesting.
I watched it on
So yeah,
TV when it first came out. Very excited.
yes, yep, yeah. Oh, I remember watching it on TV. That was huge for me. And then finally, I was like, what about Katie Sagal? And then
Mm,
boom, I got a hit.
really?
1973, season 3, episode 3, A Candidate for Crime, directed by Boris Sagal.
Yeah.
There is a 19-year-old Katie Sagal. She plays a
Really?
receptionist. Her father directed the episode. So she's in it for a whole
Bit of a nepo
minute.
baby?
Yeah, a little bit. She's got a couple of lines. You would never, ever, ever guess it was her just from
No.
sort of seeing her, the side profile, the dress at the time as a receptionist in 1973. But as soon as she speaks, you're just like, there she is. There she is. So I found that one. It had a rating of 7.7. I was like, I want to find the best episode. So there's an episode called Any Old Port in a Storm, which is an 8.3.
Yep.
And that happens to be the episode right before Katie Seagal's episode. So I was like, great, I'll watch those two.
Okay.
And I consulted a couple of other lists, and it was the Port in a Storm seems to be the sort of number one ranking. And yeah, I had a great time. Peter Falk is awesome.
Yeah.
So it started with Candidate for Crime, the whole like the just one more thing,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, the lazy eye scratching his forehead.
Yep.
It's really really good stuff.
Yeah.
The idea of showing you the killer
Yep.
at the start of the
Yeah.
episode,
The exact opposite of
is
a who done it. We know who done it. It's how's he going to catch him? Yeah. Yeah.
yes. It reminds me of Poker Face. Have you seen Poker
I've
Face with Natasha
I've
Lyonne?
been alerted that Poker Face is very similar in style, but I have not yet watched
Yes.
Poker Face. Can I perhaps get myself into trouble by telling you the reason why?
Oh, okay. This is up to you, Dan.
I'm not the greatest fan of the actress in it. I know she's beloved by a lot of
Okay.
people. Natasha Lyonne,
Yep.
is that her name?
That's right. Yes.
Something
Yep.
about it gets on my nerves, and I don't know what it is, and I just not sure. Not sure I can do it.
She's
I didn't like Russian Doll for the same reason. Russian Doll, was that what it was
okay.
called? And that
Yes.
should have been
Yes, I
something
think
I
so.
liked. That was time travel-y, Groundhog Day
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yep.
she just annoys me. Maybe it's the accent. There's something that annoys me, and I can't
Yeah.
pinpoint
Yeah.
what it is. And maybe it's something that will get me cancelled. In which case, I'm sorry. Last
It's worth
episode.
it. It's worth checking out. Look, I watched a fair chunk of it because I was on a plane, and so I was
Yeah.
like, you know what, I'm just going to chuck this on. But her mannerisms, the way that she sort of in that show, you see the killer, you see how it happens, and then she arrives on the scene, and then you watch her have that kind of fun cat and mouse game.
Yeah,
It's quite
yeah.
good.
I mean that is the joy of those shows. That's the joy of Columbo. I'm sure that's the exact joy, and I'd probably be able to look past my qualms and enjoy it if I
Yep.
watched it as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
just
And,
haven't been
any
brave enough to try.
Old Port in a Storm is really good. This I can see why it's the number one episode. The way that he traps and the trick that he uses to get the killer to
Yep.
to confess. I won't spoil it. If it's a rainy Sunday and you want to watch a bit of Columbo, check out Any Old Port in a Storm. It has Donald Pleasance, who was
Oh, yeah.
Blofeld in the Bond
Yep.
movies.
Yep.
Just something fun about going back to watching movies and shows from past eras where
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that was a movie star. You
Yeah.
know, that's so really cool. I shared a photo from that episode with you where the killer, after doing the murder, gets on a flight and
Mm.
he's flying first class. And there's a flight attendant playing an organ. Like literally, there's a giant piano in the middle of the aeroplane and a
Yeah.
staircase, a
That's how
spiral
you do it.
staircase.
Yeah.
If that's how we used to fly, what have we done? What's
I,
happened
don't know.
since then?
I think if you pay enough, you get that on Jetstar. It's just an additional fee.
Yes.
You can check the box as you book.
Yeah. If I do hear older generations complain and say, things used to be better, that's one I agree. I will agree on. And finally, I also watched Apollo 13 because
Oh
you did
yeah.
talk about movies that sort of get you a bit misty-eyed, and
Mm.
I'd never seen it. So I
Oh
was
really?
like,
Okay.
yep, never seen it. And I thought I'll watch it because I have a small story about Apollo 13. So this came out in 94, 95, and I was 14, I think, at the time. And I went to the movies with my cousin. This was on school holidays where I'd just get dumped at my cousin's house, who lived on the other side of the city. And we would just hang out at Knox shopping centre because we had
Yep.
nothing else to do. And so if there was a movie out by the name of Street Fighter, we had to go and see Street Fighter because we were
Of course.
14.
Yeah.
And that was an entire day of just going and hanging out there. So this was the days where you would line up to get into the cinema.
Yep.
So we were early. We had our tickets and then we had to wait in line. And then to kill time, we just stood there staring at this poster of Apollo 13.
Yeah, because you can't play on your phone. You can't do anything.
You can't do anything. And we were playing this game like where you had to try and remember all the names that you saw on the poster, but we're just staring at it. And then finally, we're allowed to go into the cinema. They're like, yeah, you can go in now. And the credits are still rolling on the Street Fighter session that had just ended,
Mhm.
which meant that we saw the post-credit scene for Street Fighter
Oh, okay.
first, and then they started the movie.
Yeah.
Right. And in the post-credits, it's Raul Julia, who was playing Bison, returning from the dead.
Okay.
Raul Julia had tragically passed away like a couple of months earlier, and people will say, unfortunately, Street Fighter was his last movie ever. And so they took away
That
that
was with
post-credit
Kylie
scene.
Minogue as well, right?
Yes, and
Yes.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah,
Yes.
they shot it out on the Gold Coast or something.
Yeah.
So to not, I don't know, besmirch the legacy of Raul Julia, they got rid of the post-credit scene. It's not supposed to exist
Oh, okay.
because you're not supposed to think that he's coming back
No.
for another movie.
Yeah.
But in Australia, they'd run some other cut because we saw it. And then I remember talking to friends and saying, "Did you stay behind? Did you stay behind?" They were like, "Yeah. It wasn't there. It wasn't there." So we only saw it because we must have seen like a really early screening.
Right.
Super weird, but it just gave me memories. When you were talking about Apollo
Yeah.
13. So yeah, Apollo 13 is awesome. Just that 90s
Yeah.
movie feel, practical effects. I wanted to know because I assumed, did you go to the cinema?
I'm not. I honestly don't remember. Probably.
I've got to think that some of those shots were blowing your mind.
Yeah.
Back then, the practical effects of everything, it's just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah, and to think, none of it's 3D or anything like that.
The gang in a little spaceship just floating around trying to sort shit
Yeah,
out, and then the
probably
people
just
down on the base trying to sort shit out for them. Yeah,
trying
good
to
stuff.
help him out. Yes, I remember. I feel like I've seen a something at work around teamwork, like someone like a small documentary with Brian Grazer and Ron Howard. Like I've seen this documentary, I couldn't find it, where they then use. They're very big on teamwork, and they use that as like a as an example. Like their company, Imagine Entertainment,
Yeah.
is so big on teamwork. And then I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, this whole movie is about teamwork. This is just one big, like
Yep.
the whole thing is about working with each other and trusting with each other and that kind of thing. A nice coincidence is that Goodwin is in Apollo 13. He was one of the
He is.
Capcom guys.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yep.
He's I can imagine him right now. Yep.
Yep. Capcom 1 is Goodwin. And it also featured one of my favorite movie tropes, which is when a whole group of guys are yelling and arguing about the answer to something, and one guy steps forward and tells everyone to shut up, and he has the answer.
Yeah.
And everyone hushes. That's great. That was one of my favorite scenes.
Yes.
So that was Apollo 13. Very, very good times revisiting that.
Yes. And I think I've got one more tiny piece of homework. We've barely got anywhere yet, but finally I got I think we were talking about the Getting Lost documentary. I can't remember when we were talking about that. Many weeks ago. There was a documentary recently made called Getting Lost, which I backed on whatever it was, Kickstarter or
Oh,
whatever it
right.
was.
So you'd seen the project
Seen
announced
it, I thought, yeah, I'd
somewhere?
like to see that. And basically they went around and they interviewed pretty much everybody. They pretty much the only cast member they didn't get, or the only major cast member they didn't get was Matthew Fox.
Oh, okay.
One suspects he may not be the easiest person in the world to deal with, Foxy. But anyway,
He may have been busy, Dan.
he may have been.
I've got a little bit of something coming up later that
Okay.
he may have been doing something else at the time.
Oh,
Might have
maybe.
just been busy.
And anyway, that becomes a bit of a running gag, the fact that they couldn't get him. Like they ask all the others and they go,
Okay.
"Oh, you couldn't get Foxy, eh? You couldn't get Foxy. Oh, yeah." Anyway, but
Wow.
it's pretty much it's what you'd expect. It's pretty much the entire Lost experience from the perspective of, all the cast, all the crew, podcasters,
Yep.
fans. They touch on the recent scandals around the writing room and that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, it's quite comprehensive. I've got a lovely little Blu-ray disc there that popped up
Oh,
into my
nice
mail
one.
the other day. So it wasn't just a download. So yeah, it's all good.
Yep. Good timing. Now, the Lost Ninja is he
I,
interviewed for this?
I assume he must be. I maybe in disguise somewhere. Who
I
knows?
don't
Who
know.
knows who the Lost Ninja can disguise himself as?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, good luck tracking him down.
Yeah,
Well, that's also I think I'm going to have to watch that. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media for Getting Lost, right? That's what it's called.
Getting Lost. Yeah. Have you got a Blu-ray player?
I do.
I'll
I
send you my
think.
disc.
Assume. Thank you. Oh, that'll be great. I'll check it out. All right. Shall we talk about The Constant?
Yeah, let's do it. We might as well.
Rip the Band-Aid off. Are you
Yep.
willing to do it, Dan?
Delayed it long enough. Let's go.
All right, let's get into our review as we always do. We are talking about The Constant. This is from season 4, episode 5, and the IMDb description goes as follows. During the helicopter ride to the ship, Desmond's consciousness begins jumping back and forth between present day 2004 and 1996. He is forced to find Daniel Faraday in 1996 in order to get answers and stop the jumps. Now, that sounds too straightforward. Dan, can we please hear your review from this time?
Yes. Well, when we started doing all these reviews, there was the sense that perhaps, given their age, that there might be stuff in here that might
Oh,
not
no.
age brilliantly. I think this is the closest I get to something that doesn't age brilliantly. But
Oh, no.
nevertheless, this is the Let's Cancel Dan episode. We'll go for it. So here we go. The Constant. Well, Desmond's once again gone off the deep end, time-wise. This time he doesn't seem to know whether it's 1996 or 2004. Hardly surprising, given it's 2008. Still, while Saeed tries to calm him down on the freighter, that geek physicist on the island, Faraday, urges him, Desmond, to visit him, Faraday, in the past. He's not sure whether that will help, but it will give his past self an opportunity to show off his pet mouse, who he declares, without one standard shred of evidence, to be the fastest in all Mexico. When Desmond points out that neither of them are anywhere near Mexico, Faraday grows disinterested in his experiments, allows his mouse to die, and urges Desmond to instead go find somebody else to talk to, both now and in the future. Say, that girlfriend of his, what's her face? Desmond, knowing on which side his bread is buttered, namely the future side, does so, but not before stealing that tiny sombrero, because that's freaking adorable.
No.
There you go, a Speedy Gonzales reference. You didn't expect that, did you?
I did not. I honestly thought it was going to go somewhere else. I think you're okay, Dan.
I
Like,
think I'm
we
okay.
understand.
I think it's borderline these days. The old Mexican stereotypes on Speedy Gonzales, but
Yeah,
nevertheless.
yeah. I don't think they're doing Speedy these days, but that's okay. It was 2008,
A
as
different
you
time.
said. Yeah, it was a different time. So thank you for doing that, Dan. I've loved every one of those,
Yes.
each episode of the season. So The Constant was written by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse, of course, and
Hmm.
directed by Jack Bender. So it first aired in the US on February 28, 2008. And in Australia, we didn't have to wait too long. March 6th, 2008. So
That's a week later.
only
That's yeah.
yeah, only a week later, pretty good. This, of course, has an IMDb rating of 9.7, which does make it first in the list.
Yep.
It had a US audience of 12.9 million viewers.
Hmm.
And if you'll indulge me, Dan, I can take you through the Australian ratings
Yeah.
deep
Let's see
dive.
what we got.
So there's still no secondary channels. So Lost is on. It's been bumped to 9:30. It's not on at 8:30. So 768,000. So we even with a
Ooh.
bit of regional, I don't think we're hitting our
No, we're below
10%. I
that
think
10%
it's
mark. Yeah.
yeah, we've fallen away. At 8:30 before Lost, there was it was two half-hour comedies. 8:30 p.m. Out of the Question, which did 755K, followed by an episode of The Family Guy,
Right.
762,000. So Out of the Question, does this ring any bells, Dan?
I have zero. I have never heard of the TV show Out of the Question before. No.
Neither had I. Neither had I. But it surprised the answer might surprise you. Look, it only ran for 1 year, 2 seasons, which were all ran in the same year. So Out of the Question was an Australian chat and game show hosted by comedian Glenn Robbins. So
Okay.
here we are. We're back in the sort of Tony
Yeah.
Martin
Yeah.
universe. Each week, several celebrity guests competed against each other in a 3-round quiz revolving around current events and popular culture. Guests included Ed Cavalier, Fifi Box, Tony Moclair, which is Guido
Hmm.
Hatzis himself, Kate Langbrook, Santo Chalaro, and Lawrence Mooney.
Yep.
Randomly, one episode had Rob Schneider. He must have been visiting
Okay.
for some reason. Yeah, this
Why not?
premiered in 2008, and then despite lackluster ratings, it came back again in September, and then that was it. But I was thinking, this is basically your prototype for have you been paying
I
attention?
was just about to say, yeah, it sounds exactly the same.
Yes, yeah, because it wasn't a proper game show.
Mm.
Like, you've got comedians, they're on a panel, they're talking about the news, and they're
All
just sort
cracking
of
gags.
singing. Yeah, exactly. But it's just got that very 2008 sort of feeling about it. And so yeah, so that was it. Just a very short-lived concept from Channel 7. But have you been paying attention, which wouldn't start until 2013? It also had very low ratings, but they just
Right.
stuck with it.
Yeah.
Just really gave it a
Yeah.
chance to kind of find its feet and flourish. And here we are 12 years later.
Yeah.
And the show's still
Yeah.
going strong. So
Good stuff.
yeah, good on them. Over on Channel 9, it's RPA,
Hmm.
which really dominated back then. And then at 9:30, here's one we haven't spoken about before: Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares.
Right. So that's just an angry England chef just yelling at people.
That is, I love me some Gordon Ramsay Kitchen Nightmares. I have a small tradition where every Christmas we go away with another couple and their young kids, and they are mad Gordon fans.
Mhm.
And what we do is when the kids go to bed every night, we crack out the latest, just a random season of Gordon, whatever version of it is, and we just watch him yell at people,
Yep.
and it's glorious. So I do love a bit of Kitchen Nightmares. Over on Channel 10 at 8:30, it was, of course, Law and Order, SVU,
Yep.
followed by Medium, always Medium. And over on SBS, there was Unit 1, don't know what that was, The World News. So pretty boring stuff, really, on the telly
Mm.
when The Constant aired. So I thought, got to see what's happening on Foxtel.
I bet none of those rate 9.7 on IMDb. Not a single one of those other shows.
No, nothing's touching the genius of The Constant. Although over on Foxtel, Comedy Channel,
Mhm.
Jon Stewart, followed by the Colbert Report.
Yep.
That's it. Pretty
Classic.
pretty
Yeah.
consistent. Yep. Over on Fox 8, Celebrity Poker Showdown. Did you ever check out
I
any of
may
the?
have watched the odd
Yeah.
celebrity poker. I like there was a brief period where I was kind of watching it, not regularly, but if I go, oh yeah, I'll check
Yeah.
that out. And it's just like, nah.
You
There
were a
was
poker
a
guy,
strange
Dan?
poker craze that swept the world very
Yes.
briefly, and I was briefly swept along with it, but didn't last long.
Okay. How far did it sweep you? How far were
Oh,
you swept
not very
along?
far. Like to the extent that I go, oh yeah, let's watch some poker, and
Oh,
but
okay.
for like couple of weeks maybe. Like it wasn't a big sweep.
You weren't down at the local
No,
entering your
no, I
local
didn't
comps
play. I
or
just thought, oh yeah, okay, let's see what this is all about.
yeah. So I thought it would be fun. Do you want to hear some of the winners? There were 8 seasons
Hmm.
that of Celebrity Poker Showdown. Would you like to know who won those 8 seasons of Celebrity Poker Showdown? Can I interest you in that information?
You could
Okay.
definitely interest
We
me in
love
that.
we love a list. All right. So the first tournament was won by Nicole Sullivan of Mad TV.
Oh, there you go.
So
Good work,
there's
Nicole.
always a connection. She beat out David Cross and Paul Rudd. I won't read everyone out, but there's just some fascinating names you need to know about. Right, second season, second tournament. You've got Maura Tierney, she
Hmm.
of News Radio.
News radio. Yep.
Yep, loved News Radio. She beat out Rosario Dawson, Michael Ian Black, another comedian. Third tournament, Seth Meyers,
Hmm.
he gets the win. He beats out David Cross, loses a game, but he
But
still
David
makes it to the
Cross.
final table. Yeah, and Dave Navarro as well is
Okay.
there. The fourth season, Mackay Pfeiffer, he of 8 Mile fame,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and yep, and would go on to star in ER for 135 episodes. Defeated Matthew Perry,
Mhm.
Dennis Rodman, Kevin Nealon, and Neil Patrick Harris.
That's quite a poker table.
Yeah, this show baffles me because I don't know whether to think, oh, this will just be some C grade celeb stuff, but they attract some talent. The fifth tournament winner was Brad Garrett. He of
Oh yeah.
yep, everybody loves Raymond,
Yep.
the brother. He beats out Jason Alexander, Colin
Hmm.
Quinn,
Hmm.
Bonnie Hunt. The sixth winner, the
So it feels
sixth
like
tournament.
there should be a lot of gags flying back and forth with it because it mostly seems like at least 50% comedians at the final table each time.
Yeah, it's got to make for good
Yeah.
for good TV. But I remember watching it. It was pretty relaxed, I think, as
Yeah.
a show. The sixth tournament was won by Kathy Najimy, who,
Hmm.
of course, from Sister Act, and she played the voice of Peggy Hill. She beat out Cheryl Hines. Is probably the only
Yep.
name I know here. Don't know what Cheryl Hines is up to these days. She also beat out someone called Stephen Collins, who I don't know, but Dan, I needed you to know in this tournament who Stephen Collins defeated to
Okay.
make it to the final. So the Stephen Collins table was Bryan Cranston, Howie Mandel,
Yep.
Peter Dinklage, and Meatloaf. But that was the
Wow.
that was the table.
Good to have all those heads up on your mantelpiece, just looking out over you.
Yes.
These are the ones I've taken down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And that wasn't Cranston's only appearance. He's in a lot of these. He just didn't make it to the final
So he's not
table
very
because
good.
no, he's just the Malcolm he's the funny dad from Malcolm in the Middle in a
Oh,
lot of
that's right.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking 2003 to
Yeah, right.
2006. The seventh winner was someone called Stephen Culp. I do not know who that is, but
Mhm.
he defeated Kevin Nealon on that table. And then in the final tournament, Jason Alexander finally triumphed. George himself beating out Michael Ian Black, and Keegan Michael Key was on that table as well. So that's what was happening on Fox 8.
Wow.
Now, over on MTV,
Yep.
the most iconic MTV series from the thousands. I'd like to think the early thousands. Can you think of anything, Dan?
No, I can't think of what it could be.
It's
Oh,
in
was it The Simple Life?
no.
Was
It's
that MTV?
it probably
Paris Hilton
was. Probably
and her
yeah,
idiot
probably
friend?
brought to us by. No, it was Johnny Knoxville and his idiot friends.
Ah, of
It
course.
was
A
Jackass.
different brand of idiot friends. Yeah.
Yes.
The male idiot
Which
friends.
yes. Now, on this night, the episode of Jackass rated. Would you like to guess the rating, Dan?
Oh,
It's lower than 1.
0.6.
It was a zero. Nobody had flicked over to
Not a single
MTV.
person.
Not a single person. We're all too busy watching Desmond.
Yeah.
But mind you, on the How To channel, which was a thing for a little while, a show called Vroom Vroom, which was a Top Gear ripoff, that had 10,000 viewers.
Okay.
But nobody watching Jackass. So that's that's the ratings from the 6th of March 2008 in Australia. And before we get into the discussion, should we do you want to know the number one movie at the time?
Yeah.
Just kind of put us in that
Yep.
place. March 6th, 2008. The number one film just before The Constant aired was Meet the Spartans. Are
Okay.
you familiar with these?
Is this one of these poor man's flying high things? Yeah.
Yes, it is. This is Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer, who made, they've made all their money making those terrible, terrible spoof
Yep.
films. But there was a time where you could release one of those and it would, be the number one in Australia for a couple of weeks.
Of course it would be.
Yes, they wrote Spy Hard for Leslie Nielsen, and that
Yeah.
got them their first kind of gig. Then they wrote Scary Movie, but it was taken off them and handed to the Wayans brothers, and that became a big franchise. So then they went back to the drawing board, and then they started directing their own films: Date Movie, Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans, Disaster Movie, Vampires Suck, The Starving Games, Best Night Ever, which was a found footage spoof, and then Super Fast, which was a Fast and Furious spoof. So those fellas just found what they were
Yep. They stuck to good.
not
Bless
good
them.
at.
I hope they're very happy. I'm sure they are very happy. Why not?
Be very happy, and they'd be earning more than you and I.
Exactly.
with
So
their silly movies.
that's good. Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. So that's what was happening back in 2008. Now, Dan, I assume you watched this episode. You threw the remote down,
Yep.
stormed out of the room.
Yeah. I can't believe this is number one. What is this nonsense?
How do you want to have this discussion?
Well, well, okay. Here's the thing.
I can. Do you want me to set the scene? Because I've
set the scene.
I've got quotes, right? I've just quickly threw together. So Time Magazine, best episode of television in 2008, best lost episode ever on lists of IGN, LA Times, TV Guide, National Post, Entertainment Weekly. Alejandro Garay wrote, "It was exquisite, mind-blowing, impeccably done, and unforgettable." Patrick Day of the LA Times called the episode a mind-blowing tour de force. Vern Gay of Newsday wrote, "Last night's 44 minutes of Lost were among the most satisfying 44 minutes in front of the tube in my life. It wasn't merely a brilliant episode, which pushed the mythology forward more rapidly and richly than any episode in my memory, but it was an emotional release. I actually cried when Penny and Desmond finally connected, and there wasn't one single solitary false note."
Wow.
And then finally
we'll come to that. But anyway, keep going.
In 2018, The Ringer, which is a very popular, site nowadays, just around pop culture and sports and all things, they named The Constant the number one best episode of television from the 21st century. So they did a list, the 100 best episodes, and The Constant was number one, and it was a very well thought out list. Everything fully justified. You've got people like Alan Sepinwall and these types of contributors. I'll give you a little blurb from their write up when they gave it number one. "It stands as a testament to the power of myth making and world building, of trusting the viewer to trace every thread of an arc, even when the characters can't. But it also functions shockingly well as an isolated act, capable of serving as a treatise on the power of love, even if you don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the show's ever-expanding mythology. The message of The Constant, like its protagonist, is timeless. The puzzle may be fun, but heart will always be the heart."
A lot of people like it, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah. Are you curious about the top 10, or should we can do that later? I want to get your Dan.
All right. Well, let's. So, firstly, I should say, there is definitely some great stuff in here. I'm not, I know I'm playing the villain on this entire podcast series, but like I don't hate the episode. The episode is great. It's a very good episode, as I've said on multiple occasions. It's just
Yeah.
not in my top 10. So, and there are some things I love about this. I love a good time travel story, and there's
Yep.
some very fun classic time travel tropes in this, which I really am into. I love Faraday, on the phone to Desmond saying, "Hey, you got to go back and you got to visit me in the past." That's brilliant. I love it. Like that's
Yep.
top tier shit. So there's some really good stuff, but there are three things I've been thinking about this. There are three
Okay.
things that kind of drag it down for me. Not a lot, but just enough to pull it outside the top 10. And these are obviously things that don't bother other people. I'm fully aware of that. That's why it's still rated number one. But it's enough
That's
to.
what this podcast is all about.
Yeah. So, all right. You ready for these three things? You want me to hit
Number
you with
one.
them? All right.
Or
Number
number
one.
three, whichever order. Yep.
These aren't in any particular order.
Okay.
Just three things. Firstly, I just think it's a better episode of television than it is an episode of Lost. So if you want to argue it's a great episode of Desmond the Show, I would go, yes, this is a brilliant episode of Desmond the Show. This is absolutely wonderful, but it's just a little bit too isolated from the rest of the cast for my liking. You get Saeed, you get a little bit of Jack, you got some implicit Michael. We don't actually see him, but he's there opening doors for people.
Mm-hmm.
But that for the original 815ers, that's literally it. You don't get a Locke, you don't get Kate, you don't get Hurley, you don't get Sawyer, you don't get Sun, you don't get Jin. Like, don't get Ben. Ben wasn't on an 815, but you still don't get him. And it's just like, come on, by this stage, I'm not sure. I know most Lost episodes focus on a main character and everyone else is a bit in the background. But this is really like, you're not showing anybody. And I get why that is. It's a very dense story.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But it's a little bit too much. This isn't Lost. This is Desmond's story.
Yep. The Desmond hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess like my counterpoint to that is like the show did start to introduce little, this week on a very special episode, we deviate and do something, like whether it's the other 48 days and then eventually into Aberturno and things like that. But I absolutely take your point. Yeah.
So it's not a big deal. It's just, but it does lose a few points there for me. I want to see my Hurleys or my Sawyers, Kraken Wise or whatever.
Yeah.
So, it loses a few points there for me. It's just whatever. Point two. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I said I love some time travel. Big, massive time travel fan. Love all kinds of time travel stories. There's a little bit of time travel sloppiness in this episode that just nags at me a little. Nags at my little time travel-y brain. So, Eloise. You've got Eloise. Is she a mouse or is she a rat? She's a rat. Let's say she's a rat. Eloise runs the maze, right?
Yes.
Faraday says, this is so amazing because I'm going to train her in an hour from now. And then the next time we see Eloise, she's dead. And Faraday has checked his watch and he says, Desmond, you've been unconscious for 75 minutes. Now, I don't know how long it takes to train a rat to run a maze, but I reckon it's longer than 15 minutes. So I don't think Faraday ever trained this bloody rat. So how did it get the memory of how to run the maze? It drives me mad. It drives me insane. Come on, guys.
So your interpretation, Des passes out. Faraday sees that happen. He's like, okay, well, I'll just prop him up over here so he doesn't hit his head. Okay, Eloise, time to do our maze again. And he's like, practice. Desmond comes to. No, sorry. And then the
well, before he gets to train him, Desmond wakes back up and it's too late. Rat's dead. Just like, when did you train her? Come on.
Oh, no, good point. Fair point.
It's not as bad as I thought. For a long time, I had in my memory, like I forgot that Desmond, lost consciousness and zipped back to 2004.
Yep.
And I thought, wait a sec, like he definitively didn't train her. And then, no, Desmond disappeared. So it is conceivable that he really rapidly said, all right, come on, Eloise, you're the smartest rat I've ever had. I'm going to train you. And just scraped it in just in time before Desmond woke up. and
Yeah.
then the rat's dead, and he's not heartbroken. Just like that, dead rat. That's
Okay.
fine. Still had time to
Okay.
train it. So
That's all. If I may, a small
yeah,
counterpoint to each of these larger points, Dan. I can see that that's a very special thing that like you said that drives you nuts in particular because since I have told people, hey, I'm doing this podcast, and they get inspired to rewatch the show, they're sending me all kinds of texts. Why did this happen? Why did that
yep.
happen? This show has got plenty of
Mm.
small nitpicks, and I find it hilarious that this is the one that you are stuck on because
Uh,
there's so many things, obviously, just over the course of trying to create a TV
oh,
show.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it mostly annoys me because it's just like, oh, come on, guys, just say he was out for 3 hours. It's just like then you've got time to train. Now
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
75 minutes. Like, oh, fucking hell.
Mm.
Anyway, but
Okay.
very small. Again, not a big deal. I can look past it, but it does just drag it down a couple of notches for me.
Yep.
And then I guess the final thing that knocks it down a few points, and this one's only true in retrospect, and this kind of goes to what you've been saying. Yeah, they are kind of making it up on the fly to a certain extent. Is the whole Desmond will be Faraday's constant thing because
Mm.
I don't think they barely interact with one another for the rest of the show. Faraday goes
Yes.
back in time. Desmond's off doing whatever he does, and
Yep.
you get a brief scene of Faraday knocking on his hatch in the season 5 premiere when they're zipping through time, and he says,
Hmm.
go see my mother." But that's it. Like that's literally the only time they interact. So what's the story with Desmond will be my constant? Like I don't really get it.
Do you, yeah, do you interpret that as Desmond will be my constant and he hasn't met him yet again until he gets to the island, meets him, and now he's now fine. And it was
Mm,
just a tease that, oh, yeah, to wrap up the episode,
yeah.
Dan was also having all sorts of issues, but he's okay now? Or do you interpret it as they need to continually keep bumping into each other so that their brains don't go haywire?
Yeah, I don't know. I just yeah, I guess I interpret my interpretation of that, final tease has always been that,
Yeah.
Faraday's ready. Whenever anything goes wrong, if he like really starts to lose it, he can just say, "Hey, Desmond, you're my constant. I'll be better
Yeah.
now." So same as Desmond just recovered. And that doesn't happen. Just-
Mm. I guess
so
it could it be an explainer for how there's the scene where Widmore visits him and
mm,
he has a carer and
yeah.
there's clearly all these experiments and everything, and it's because he's had that interaction with Desmond.
Mm,
He himself, he's been experimenting, he's flying all over the place, but when he arrives on the island, people have asked, why is he so, how did he pull his sort of shit together? And I guess
yeah.
because the second he
Yeah.
came within that everything finally came back together and
So,
he was okay.
you're saying Desmond has already had his constant effect on him before he even got to the island. Just knowing Desmond
I'm
exists.
I'm 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 thinking from when Widmore asks him to go to the island and
Mm,
he's like crying and barely function, all the way until he lands on the island, and then I think he start like the closer he gets, he's probably improving until he
yeah,
finally
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a an interaction.
yeah. That's not bad. Yeah, yeah, I'm still skeptical. I just think
Yeah,
I
that's
just
okay.
think they thought, oh, what a cool twist this will be at the end, and that's the last they
Yeah,
ever really
okay.
thought about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, like wouldn't oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if they
Yeah.
opened the book and it said that?
And I guess the final other thing that's not really a major thing is I do Desmond's a great character. I think he's a
Mm.
bit of a drip when it comes to Penny. It's just like, come on, mate, just what are you doing? She loves you. Why are you in a yacht race around the world?
Yeah,
Like, their love story doesn't really appeal to me because I just think he's like, sort yourself out, mate. She loves you. She's great. What are you doing? Where
yeah,
are you going?
yeah.
Just ignore her, Dad. What are you talking about?
That's fair. That's fair enough because I think the only answer to that is hashtag the island. The
Yeah,
island demands, he his destiny was to end up in that hatch,
yeah,
was to save the world
yeah,
basically, and he had to go through all of that, and he got his reward, at the end of it, his pension. So, but I think it's also it is hard to watch the first time where he's like we need to break up.
Yeah.
And you're like, what, why? Yeah, it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
And I still and as you watch it, it's less. It's not very easy to watch either because you're like, this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much where I stand. So I don't. Yeah, it's a great episode. Like all those things, they're very minor nitpicks, but they are definitely accumulate enough to say, all right, this isn't my top 10. This is I
Yeah.
don't know where it is, but it's not my top 10. It's there are other episodes that have fewer problems in my eyes anyway.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Dan, after by the time we've made it to episode one, we've chatted about a lot of different lost episodes, and I wondered if the constant was knocking on the door at 11, or there's other things we've talked about that have really pushed it further down.
No, I think it's probably in the teens somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a long way out of the top 10 for me. I think it is like it is great. Like the way they do the time things, the edits are brilliant. I love the way they, there's no fanfare about them. It's just like, nah, 1996 now, nah, 2004 now, nah, so yeah, it's really cool. See, there are other nits I might pick with it, but they don't bother me at all. So like things like he has to go to find Faraday at Oxford or whatever, and suddenly that's fine. He doesn't jump. I don't know how long it takes him to get from his army base to
Yes.
Oxford. Just like, oh, that doesn't matter. We're not going to jump in that period. It's fine. Who cares? That's fun. That's part of the story.
Yes. We we never jumped back to him just taking a train somewhere and
Yeah.
sitting there and staring at at nothing.
Yeah.
Or how he didn't just pass out and get hit by a car.
Yeah.
He manages to get to all these very dramatic moments.
Yeah. So there are some great things. There are some genuinely great things in the episode. I love all the mysterious freighter shit and how menacing Kimi is, and
Yep.
being locked in the room, and then Saeed comes charging in, and there's really good stuff. But
This episode does this. It does suffer from one thing. I'll bring this up as a nitpick, that something we spoke about in our interview with Fiona when she had wrapped up watching the show, was these characters that clearly know something and won't just tell us. And when the doctor comes in and he's like, I just need to give you a sedative and all that, and it's like, just talk to, like, if you were the normal person that you say you are, just explain to him what's going on. And why Fisher Stevens is over there, and that. And it also reminded me of there's another review I've got here, which I thought you'd enjoy. So I was a big reader of the AV Club. Basically, that was my, after
same.
every episode of Lost, read the AV Club, the Noel Murray recaps. But that was it. Like, I didn't go deep. I wasn't on a message board. I wasn't on any other blogs or anything like that. But this was from his original review. He says, the only problem with The Constant isn't really a problem with the episode itself, but with what it means for future episodes. Namely this, with Daniel starting to come clean to Jack and Juliet on the beach about the island's time-bending nature and his own prior knowledge of it, coupled with Saeed's freighter experiences, if none of these people spend the next episode grilling everyone around them about what the hell is going on, then the collective Lost fandom is going to groan so loud that it'll drown out any dissonant horn blare. That was funny because, nope, characters will continue not talking about things they've just experienced.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right, that's The Constant. Now, Dan, I do know, to explain some of these mysteries, did you talk to ChatGPT?
I did. There weren't an awful lot of mysteries leaping out of this one, but I did ask ChatGPT to help me a bit. We did also mention at one point the weirdness of Penny showing up just before Desmond heads off on his around the world trip, which kind of does undercut somewhat the 8 years of her waiting to hear from him.
Yes.
We kind of just ignore that too. That's fine. All right. So the first mystery I asked ChatGPT is, why do you need to stick to specific coordinates when entering or leaving the island? This is a big deal. You got Lapidus saying, no, got to track use these coordinates that Faraday gave me. Otherwise, who knows what could happen. ChatGPT says,
bearing.
Incorrect coordinates risk sending travelers off course, not just in location, but potentially in time as well, due to the island's distortion of space-time.
Mm,
Sort of, right?
okay.
Who, and this is a very big question at the time, who is secretly helping Saeed and Desmond on the freighter? On the freighter during season 4 of Lost, it is revealed that there is a secret mole or ally helping Saeed and Desmond from within the crew. This person is eventually disclosed to be Michael Dawson, one of the original
Oh,
Oceanic Flight A15 survivors. So you're thinking,
yes.
good work, ChatGPT, you nailed that.
Yeah. Yep.
Disclosed to be Michael Dawson, one of the original Oceanic Flight 815 survivors who was previously believed to have died on the island. No, that's not true.
It did mention a mole on the ship, the freighter, and I thought it was going to mention former host of the mole, Grant Bowler.
Yes. Yes.
Could see it
No.
getting its wires crossed. Okay. All right. That was that. It always just has to go one sentence further, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And completely fall in the mud.
Yeah. And then the final question, which is the one that I kind of was alluding to earlier. Why does Daniel Faraday also need a constant? While Desmond seemed to have a natural resistance, Faraday required developing his own constant tether to the present reality in order to preserve his mind, memories, and sense of self while experimenting with the island's hostile metaphysical time travel environments. Not sure anything makes sense in that word salad, but there you go.
No.
That's why Faraday needed Desmond to be his constant.
Okay. That is, I'm not sure if there's any more we can say, but we do want to hear everybody else's thoughts. We know
Yeah.
that it's such a popular, episode. Is there anything about it
And
that
it was
bothers you?
what was it? Your number 3, 4?
Number four.
Number four.
So I still love it. It still stood out to me at the time. We covered that in our our 6th or 7th episode.
7th episode, yeah.
Yes, where and we went through the show the episode in greater detail there. But I still think it's just a fun play on the idea of time travel and
I was going to say
happening in the
one of the other cool things that I did love about it, and I don't remember the details of that, but for a long time I had a lost theory that I was kind of working on, but never wrote down, annoyingly, because I can't remember the details of it. But my theory was that somehow all the flashbacks, and this was before the constant appeared, all the flashbacks were somehow not actually flashbacks. They were some other simultaneous time. I don't know. They were experiencing them both at the same time, or they were both happening at the same time. Like I said, I should have written it down because I had all the details in my head at the time. I was just like, wouldn't that be cool if that, like, instead of the whooshing sound wasn't a signal, it was a flashback. It was actually something else. I've forgotten what it was.
Going somewhere else, another dimension.
Else, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Like I say, I don't remember the details, but the thing I do enjoy is that is almost exactly what the constant turned out to be. It was the first time it wasn't really a flashback. It was what was it? A
spatio-temporal travel. Yes.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought because I do remember definitely around this time, the theorizing was getting out of hand. Damon and Carlton were more than happy to do an interview and tease everybody. So, they encouraged it. But the more you tried to make it all fit together, you had to wrestle with season 1 and 2, which were just very much, this is your network drama. It includes flashbacks because that's how we get our tension and cliffhangers for episodes, for commercial breaks. And the intention of the show was very clear in the early seasons, and then things got really wacky, and it was like, well, I don't think you're going to be able to retroactively make all of this work. But it was a really fun time. Okay, if that is the constant, are we ready to put a bow in that conversation?
So. I think we've done our top 10. Well, we've done 2/3 of our top 10s. We'll get yours a little bit later, but we've done the official top 10. We've done my top 10. Yours, we've done 9 out of 10. So we're almost there.
Still to come. A couple of little things we need to do before we can get to that.
But before we move on, I'll just talk a little bit about Chronologically Lost. Have you heard about Chronologically Lost? Have I mentioned this before?
No, I haven't.
All right, so this is probably a good opportunity to talk about it because the Desmond episodes are the biggest challenge for Chronologically Lost. So Chronologically
Right.
Lost was like a remixing. Some dude got all the DVDs of the entire show, got the mobisodes, and said, "I'm going to put every single scene in chronological order." He did it.
Wow.
And
Yep.
he split them into more or less TV length episodes, so they're like 40 to 50 minutes each. You can sit down, you can go to chronologicallylost.com. You
Uh-huh.
can
Uh-huh.
there's a torrent there, you can download them all, you can watch them all in chronological order. It starts with, first episode is our classic time travelers, Juliet and Sawyer and Locke and the gang all just popping in saying, "Hey, look at that funny
Okay.
statue." Then they pop out again. And then you're
Oh, of
straight into
course,
Across
because
the Sea.
yes, I was going to say I would have assumed that Across the Sea would be the
Mm.
first, but there is a small moment where Sawyer and the gang predate
Yeah,
even
I
those
think they
two. Yeah.
predated. They may be at the end. I don't remember the exact order, but they're
Mm.
they're in
Yep.
that first episode, and then you just start
Oh,
working your way through, and you get all these kind of random snippets of flashbacks all merged together. Then you get a good chunk of kind of 70s action. All the Dharma stuff
yes.
comes together, and then you get these last few weeks before they get on the plane and all the things that are happening on the way there. And
Mm.
it's really fun. It's really cool. And you get the scenes like the plane crash are done in like this brilliant split screen style. So you could, it's like, 6 frames. So you could
Yep.
see the plane, you could see Desmond, you could see the others. They're doing their book club. And then, finally, the hatch is going crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good.
Of
And
course, because they revisit certain moments on multiple
yes.
occasions. So he overlays them so that they're
Yeah.
all actually running at the same time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
excellent.
It's really cool.
Um, yeah.
And there was when he did Flashes Before Your Eyes, there was a heated debate in the comments. So he had a comment section on his blog,
Hmm.
and people saying, he had an opinion on where Flashes Before Your Eyes belonged. He said, "Look, it's not really time travel. It's like basically Desmond having a dream, sort of revisit to the past. Like it's all a bit hazy, but he's saying, look, as a sense, that's I'm going to place that after he turns the key. It's just like he has this weird journey. It all takes place after he
Mm.
turns the key, and we'll deal with that then." And people in the comments saying, "No, no, no, Desmond went back in time. You should have had that back in 1996. All the stuff he did, him meeting Eloise Hawking and all that kind of stuff." And those
Yeah.
people were saying, "Hey, Damon and Carlton say on their podcast that it's time travel, so you should fix it up." And then his response. Do you want his response?
I do, yes.
His response to that was, "Damon and Carlton's podcasts are highly entertaining and sometimes are filled with small nuggets of information, but by and large, they're just there for them to crack jokes, entertain us, and be purposely vague regarding any actual questions that pertain to the show. So because of
Yes,
that,
they
I tend
are.
to not lend a ton of credibility to anything they may have said on one of their podcast episodes." So I
Oh,
thought you'd enjoy that.
I wholeheartedly agree. So good to see I'm not the only one that holds that opinion, and that it was a common opinion at the time when people were
Yeah.
trying to create weird versions of Lost.
So
Did
there you go.
you?
Chronologicallylost.com. Check it out. It's worth a look.
So how much have you seen? You haven't sat
I
down
watched it
for
all the
like an
way through
entire.
one time. One
You
mad.
did,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's really
because
weird.
it's what does it equate to running time? Given that there is some
It's
overlap
pretty much
and
like
things like that.
it's the same show. It's just reordered. So it's basically just watching all of Lost again, just in slightly different orders. Once they get onto the island, it does slow down a bit and get a bit dull's too strong a word, but you got no flashbacks. So it's just
Mm.
like, oh my God, look at all this story that's just racing past here.
I will check it out. I'll definitely check it out.
It's
What
very
that
long.
fe- that feels like the perfect the perfect place to end on in our discussion of the constant. So Dan, if you're happy to put a bow in it,
Yep.
shall we tie it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, let's put a bow in the constant. Let's pack that away, and then I've just got a few more little bits of historical media that I
Mhm.
really need to share
Yep.
with everyone before we kind of call this podcast a day. Dan, can I interest you in another Mad Magazine
Of
lucky
course.
dip?
Yeah.
Last week I teased Middle Earth reality shows,
Yes.
and I've let's kind of bust it. This is from the special Twilight edition of Mad Magazine, issue number. If you're keeping if you're keeping score, issue number 477. And I thought there's a couple of really good ones in here. This is some quality gear from you, Dan. I should note that Ben Brown was the artist for this excellent double page spread. Beauty and the Golem. The five remaining beauties, Christy, Kirsty, Kelly, Kimmy, and Carly, try to bring Gollum out of his shell with an impromptu feast of strawberries and champagne in the hot tub. Alas, the attempt fails as the cave-dwelling creature opts to dine on a decaying fish carcass. Then it's time for this week's challenge, and yep, it's another friggin' riddle competition. That one was good.
It's very poor form to laugh at your own jokes, but still, that's
Yes,
well done past me.
And actually, Dan, would you be willing? We can't end this podcast without getting you to actually read one of these out yourself. Could you do us a favor? I think I've sent you one for you to read out, and I mostly just wanted to hear how you would pronounce a lot of the, because this is a good gag, but I don't think I could do it justice.
Yeah, it's it's not easy to pronounce, but we'll give it a crack. So this one is what was this one? This was Necromancing with the Stars.
That's right.
We're down to the final three. Which wizard celebrity couple will win? Will it be Gandalf the Grey and Bilbo and their baffling card tricks? Saruman the White and Elrond with their cups and balls? Or Sauron the Terrible and Gollum and their bloodily convincing sawing an orc in half? Send your vote via Rider of Rohan through Fangorn Forest, over the river Hilthaglia, across the denuded plains of Enedwaith, then over Beligir the Great Sea to Necromancing with the Stars, Valinor Studios. Entries close midnight tonight.
Very good.
There you
Dan,
go. These things were written to be read, not to be read out aloud.
Those that speak Elvish can write in and critique your effort there.
So that's a little bit of mad nonsense from me, a little bit of shenanigans. I just thought because I knew you wanted me to have a closer look at this one. So I went back and searched through my emails and I found my original pitch for this piece
Really?
to the editor of Mad from 18th of September 2012. And I thought you might like to hear exactly what I pitched.
Little peek behind the curtain. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yes. This one.
Yep.
So here's the email. Dave's the editor. No doubt you've heard about The Hobbit being made into a trilogy that begins to come out at the end of this year. I assume you're doing Hobbity related stuff for the appropriate issue. But on a similar idea, what about if you did an article about other children's stories being expanded to needlessly long movie trilogies? I was thinking maybe a picture of the original book with 3 movie posters to the side of it. For example, Green Eggs and Ham, an epic saga a la Lord of the Rings. Movie 1, Green Eggs and Ham, The Greening of the Hens. Movie 2, Green Eggs and Ham, The Purchase of the Pig. Movie 3, Green Eggs and Ham, The Butcher in the Barnyard. Or Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which would be romantic comedies. Movie 1, When Jehovah Met Margaret. Movie 2, God's Just Not That Into You. Movie 3, 27 Deities. And I go on for like that for a bit. And he wasn't really into that idea.
Okay.
But he came back. He said, "Oh, we'll definitely do the Hobbit stuff. So pitch something." And that's when I got back to him a little bit later in the thread and said, "What about reality TV shows?" And I did suggest, as I mentioned last week, I did suggest Faramir Wants a Wife. I also suggested Who Wants to Be a Silmarillionaire? But he didn't like those. He was like, no, they've got to actually be in the Hobbit movies to include. So there you go.
That's really interesting. So you would that be as a proactive? You would, because you obviously already had a relationship.
At that stage, I was just pitching ideas and would either get a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Yeah, and you, I guess you just have to know how the editor is feeling about what he likes to include or what he sees as of the Mad.
And you're always looking ahead to what movies were coming out a bit later and just like, oh, well, we better get something ready in time for that one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, as another sense, I also found 10th of June 2009.
Ooh.
Not sure if you've done anything on the parodying Twitter front already or not, but I had a vague idea for superhero Twitters. Thought I'd check in with you on the viability of it before I started working up comedy sweat. So there you go, 2009. And Twitter was so new. He's like, oh, yeah, can you send me a screenshot of what Twitter looks like?
Oh, that I'm so glad we've gone full circle from that lucky dip
Yep.
down at the comic book store all the way to the email
Yep.
where it all started. Thank you for playing along with that, Dan. 'Cause once you told me that about Made magazine, I wanted to do everything I could to bring that in here, and I'm so glad we made that happen. So thank
Yep.
you for being a good sport on that
No worries.
front. All right, I've got some other lost media from
Hmm.
around the time. One I was really excited about was the Lost video game because this was a
Yes.
pretty big production.
I think I had this game.
Yeah, of all the little things that got produced, we know we've covered Lost the mobile game,
Mm.
but an actual Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 video game, it was a pretty big undertaking. So you had this game.
I'm
Do you
pretty sure I
recall?
had this game. Yeah. I vaguely recall just being Jack and just, wandering around the island and like bumping into people and I don't know, running off and doing something else. I don't know. I don't remember the details of the game, but it
Yes.
was,
Yep. I really loved the idea. Oh, a lost game, and a friend of mine got it, and I watched him play it for about 2 minutes, and I went, "This is boring. This
yeah,
sucks." So you played as Elliot Maslow.
right,
So you didn't even play as any of the
right.
characters, but our heroes from Lost were on the beach, and you could
And
interact
you
with
jump
them.
in, you bump into them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were this other survivor, and so that meant that you could cross paths with their stories, but it was mostly about your own story. You've got amnesia, and surprise, surprise, over 7 chapters, as you accomplish certain things and find items, you have flashbacks and
Mm.
learn your own backstory. It's
Yeah.
so boring and convoluted. I couldn't. That was the interesting thing is when I got stuck into this, I was like, not just was the game boring, but the whole thing's boring. I just
Yeah.
didn't. There just wasn't much to get at this. The IGN rating is perfect, a 5.5, just a meh.
Mm.
So I was really disappointed, and I was like, oh, there's some fun videos of Locke and Charlie and the way that they are represented in the game. They are worth a little Google on YouTube because they do say that a lot of the original cast came to voice characters, but not Locke and not Charlie. Some very poor imitators. And yeah, you get to sort of run around the island. You find the hatch. You can go to the Pearl Station, the Black Rock. I was like, oh, it's all pretty boring. And then I found a new mystery for us, Dan.
Mm.
The incident room. Are you
Oh,
familiar
okay.
with and do you know of the incident room? So
I do not know about the incident room.
think back to the incident, which
Hmm.
would, happen in season 5. This game, I should mention, came out in February 2008, so
Hmm.
just a month before the Constant. And if you think about the incident itself, when everything shit started flying air and everything, they just filled that thing up with concrete, right?
Yep.
But that was the room, that was the main area that Radzinski had been working on. It was the lab. It was where all the experiments were going to be done. And then they had to change tact and build a little station that was
Yep.
essentially suitable for a couple of people to stay down there and push a button over and over
Yep.
again and release the energy. So when we see Saeed go into the Swan for the first time, he's going, look at all this concrete. They've clearly poured a whole bunch of concrete, and then Jack's key starts
Mm.
is having a reaction to all the
Yep.
magnetism.
Yep.
That's the incident room. It's behind that wall.
Okay.
And in lockdown, we get the blast door map, right?
Yep.
That everyone studied and wrote down and everything. The room is included on that as well. So people have worked out, hang on, you'd gone to a lot of detail with this incident room,
Hmm.
but you'd never bothered showing us. So
Okay.
it was just a kind of a bit of an urban legend, I guess, for a very short amount of time until people realized in the game, because this game was being produced earlier on and probably took a full year or whatever, and they shared a lot of information with them. They shared the plans for the incident room. So the incident
Right.
room, the only place that it exists
He's in
is
this
in the
game.
game. So you can go inside the incident room. And do you want to know what's in there? Not much at all. It's a
A
it's an
polar bear
empty room.
skeleton.
Yeah, it would have been fun, the great opportunity for some Easter eggs. But no, it's just it's a bit of a circular area. You've got equipment, it's all smashed up. So it's represented as, the incident had taken place. They
Yep.
quickly dumped a bunch of concrete and there it was. But we never actually got to see it in the show. So if anyone was ever curious about that exact moment from the show and what was going on behind that wall, you'll need to find a copy of Lost via Domus and get to that part of the game, and you
Yep.
can
I
take a
don't
look
think I got
around.
that far into the game.
No,
They need to edit that into chronologically lost.
that's right. Yes, just 5 minutes of this guy wandering around the incident room. So that was a little underwhelming. But another thing that I'd sort of kept up my sleeve, we're not doing Lost parodies this week, but I do have something that's pretty ridiculous.
Right.
Now, do you know the last thing that Matthew Fox has sort of appeared in acting wise? Have you?
He was in Speed Racer, wasn't he?
I think yes, yeah, I think he is in Speed
But I
Racer.
don't know
It's
what he's done since then.
2023.
Oh God, no, I haven't heard of him that recently.
Yeah, it was in an Australian TV series.
Really, was it?
Yes, so obviously, while they're trying to make the documentary Getting
Yeah,
Lost,
that's
he's
why.
busy,
Yeah,
and you'd think he's sick of the jungle, right? But he's in a TV series called Court.
Court.
So Court,
Court or Caught?
Caught.
Right. So he's previously been lost, and now he's caught.
Now he's being caught.
Yeah.
It's written in the style of MASH because this
Okay.
is a series written and directed by an Australian man named Kick Gurry is his
Hmm.
name. I think he's done a bit of comedic work and stuff. He's actually in Edge of Tomorrow. So
Hmm.
another
Yep.
lost being lost example. And it's about four Australian soldiers that are sent on a mission to a war-torn country, an unnamed war-torn country, and they're captured by some freedom fighters and they're made to produce a hostage video. But the video that they produce is so silly and wacky, it goes viral. So
Yep.
there's a kind of a fun
Yep.
concept in there.
Yep.
The show itself had an IMDb rating of 5.1. So
Right. So about
it's not very
half,
good.
half a constant.
Yeah. So you've got these four Aussie soldiers stuck in a generic jungle, captured by some very generic, poorly accented, we'll call them freedom fighters,
Yep.
and they need to be rescued. And they send in, elite Navy SEAL types and bounty hunters and all sorts of people come after them. It's an international incident, and one of those is Matthew Fox. So he's shaved head, a really small moustache, and he's playing this kind of hardwired military guy. I haven't watched the show,
No.
but what they do is have an Australian interview. So you can watch Australia's own Carl Stefanovic
Really?
interviewing
Foxy.
Matthew Fox alongside the creator. So this is the big sort of interview on Australian morning television. Carl Stefanovic, who's just basically a big goose, and it is one of the most awkward and excruciating interviews. Foxy clearly doesn't want to be there.
No, I don't think he wants to be anywhere.
Nope, he's been roped in on the promo tour. And the funniest part about all of this is, so they're in studio, they're clearly in Australia, sitting opposite Carl. They both got on their awkward stools. There's the creator and there's Foxy. And the other thing, the weirdest thing about this series is the other cast cameo appearances are there from Brian Brown,
Yep.
Susan Sarandon, and Sean Penn. They're all in this series that nobody has ever heard of that scored a 5.1, right?
How'd he get all these people?
I don't know. This man is fascinating. He's obviously got connections in Hollywood. He was
Yeah.
in Edge of Tomorrow. He's in a couple other little things, and this is a series he put together himself. So the whole interview is Carl just asking about Sean Penn and Brian Brown. And
Good on you, Carl.
Carl himself has a cameo in the show playing himself. So I guess,
Right.
there's a scene where Australian media are reporting
Yeah.
on the international incident and they're talking about that. They're talking about everything except for Matthew Fox. He has to sit there in the middle of them all, and he's there in person and he's being completely ignored. So I'm sure he sort of took that well. But if you are interested in seeing some 2023 Matthew Fox, Court is the name of the series. It's on
Man,
Stan in Australia.
might have to resubscribe to Stan for it.
Yes, I will share that very cringy interview up on the socials. And we can't say goodbye without going through award season,
Yes.
Dan.
What did the
Now,
constant win?
yeah, that's exactly what I did because season 4, we've covered this
Yes.
back in episode 5 when we did "There's No Place Like Home." We went to the Golden Globes, the Emmys, the Saturn Awards. We even went to Monte Carlo.
Hmm.
But the episode itself received a few noms, no wins. I actually couldn't find any sort of outstanding
Shameful.
anything really. Yeah.
Shameful. People who don't appreciate the constant, they're the worst kind of people.
So yeah, this was the episode that they actually submitted when they submitted for Best Drama at the
Mhm.
Emmys.
Yep.
This was their submission, of which they didn't win. Outstanding directing and outstanding writing nominations were also had. The 2009 Hugo Awards. Dan,
Mhm.
you follow the Hugo Awards? They're for
They're Hurley's Awards, right?
this is your writing and best
Yes.
novel
Yeah. The
and yeah,
sci-fi. Yep.
yes, all that kind of stuff. They were nominated but did not win for short form best dramatic presentation.
Okay.
Something else would win that award in another bizarre lost moment, but I can't spoil what that is until we get
Okay.
to and our next segment. And then eventually the Directors Guild of America would give it a nomination for Outstanding Director in a Drama Series. But no, there was
No.
no love for The Constant.
No love for the constant.
No.
Very disappointing.
Yeah. And so with that wrapped up, I think that means we can go on to List Within a List.
Yeah.
Our
Let's do it.
final
List
list.
within a list.
Yes.
So what are we doing this time around?
Well, I mean,
There's only really one topic, isn't there?
that's right. And it's things that everybody seems to love, and everybody else thinks that you would probably love it too.
Yep.
But for some reason, it just doesn't work for you.
Yep.
Just not for me. Not
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
So obviously, Dan, we know what your number one is, but how many others have you got?
I could probably go through, 3 or 4.
Yeah. Yep. I've got 4 here. Would you like to go first, or do you want me to
I'll go
kick it off?
first. I'll go
Yeah.
first. As of about 4 days ago, as we record this, I have lived in Melbourne for 1 decade, for 10 years.
Okay. Wow.
10 years
Congrats.
and 4 or 5 days. And everybody in Melbourne loves footy. I do not
AFL.
care for the
No.
AFL. I have
Oh.
zero interest in the AFL. People will talk about the AFL to me, and I will
Yes.
nod and say, "That's very nice. I'm glad that your teams are teaming.
Yes.
Very good. Very pleased for you.
Yep.
Let us talk about something else, shall we?"
Yeah.
So footy is my number one on the list.
Yes. Now, obviously, we've talked about AFL, but because I know you're a mad cricket man,
Yes.
published author in
Yes.
the space, some might say a scholar of the game,
Well, let's
an
not carry away.
influencer. But when it comes to the other footy, the NRL, is that something that does grab you?
No, not as much as cricket. More than AFL, but less than cricket.
Okay.
So I've got my team that I grew up following, which is my dad's team. So I use
Yep.
that as so I'll watch them play each week, and I'll use that as kind of a conversation starter. So hey, how'd the Dragons go last week?
Who was it? Sorry.
The Dragons, the St. George Illawarra Dragons. So we'll have a bit of a chat about that, and but I don't really like if they win or lose. I don't really care that much. It's like nice if they do, but if they
Cricket's
don't,
your
that's
game.
something else to talk about as
Yep.
well. I'm
Okay.
more into the State of Origin. The 3 matches a year. That seems to have stuck with me a little longer, but that's just 3 games. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a shame, but I get it because I'm not an NRL
Yeah,
person.
exactly. It's
by
exactly the same. It just
any
reversed.
stretch. Yeah. All right, I've got one now, Dan. So given that one was such a personal dig at me, I'll have a crack at you now.
Yeah.
My nomination here is comic books. Just comic books.
You're not into them?
Comics are weird. So a few years ago, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give it a go because I do love, I enjoy these Marvel movies. I love lots and lots of nerdy things. And I was like, you know what? I think Marvel were doing a relaunch as the Marvel and DC are want to
They do
do
all the time.
whenever, yeah, readership is lacking. They're like, oh, we're rebooting everything.
Yep. Start
This is a
again.
great chance to jump on board. So I bought this. I got right in. I had a pull list at a local comic book store.
Mhm.
They'd automatically gather everything for me every month, and I picked all these titles. But what sold me was this issue here. This is Deadpool #1
Oh yeah. Yep.
from, and that artwork is absolutely stunning. It's really hard to show on
Mm.
here, but I will post it. But it's absolutely incredible. And so my impression was, oh, that's what the art will be like when I open the book.
No, no, no.
That is not the case at all.
That's cover art.
That's right. I'd always assumed, oh wow, this book will be good. That's what it's going to be like on the inside. But no, that's not what it's like at all. They obviously need to, get the stuff done, every month, and
Yeah.
so
It's hard
it's a bit
work.
more slapdash. So I'd collected for a while, but it never really stuck with me. So yeah, comics. There you go.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. I will give the next thing that everybody who knows me, every single person I've ever met who knows my sense of humor, knows the things I like, they say, you, Dan, you will love the Blackadder. And I go,
Oh,
I do
okay.
not love the Blackadder.
Right.
Blackadder does nothing for me. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It
Yep.
just does not work for me. I look at Rowan Atkinson pulling funny faces and I go,
Hmm.
no, thank you. So yeah, people say you must no, and they always say no, no, ignore the first season, try season
Yep.
three. Then it's, no, no,
Hmm.
no, ignore season three, try season four. And everyone has different things that they tell me, and every single time
Yeah.
it's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. You can enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. It's not for me.
What do you think puts gives them that confidence? Is it other British English comedy
I
from that
think so.
time
Like I
period?
love my Monty Pythons. I like my Fries and
Okay.
Lorries. I like
Yep.
all those things, and but somehow this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I've not watched a lot of it, but I do have a friend that's very into it, and if it's on a quiet Saturday night, he sort of chuck it on and we watch it a little bit. But
Yep.
no, not a big one. Do you like Rowan Atkinson in general,
Not
Mr. Bean
really.
guy?
No.
No.
There's something about him that just no doesn't really work for me.
Doesn't work. That's fair enough. All right. Well, this is great. This segment is going great so far, Dan, because this exact thing also happened to me. We were at the cinema for
Mhm.
one night with your mates, as you want to do, back in 2001. So I would have been 19 years old.
Mhm.
So you're just like nothing to do tonight. Tight ass Tuesday. Let's go and see a movie. And before we went in down at the Sunshine Megaplex, another group of friends came out and they'd just seen a movie and they said, Chris, you are going to love this movie. This is you to a T. The comedy in this film is you up and down. And now I'd been dreading the movie that we were about to see. I was not into it.
Right.
And when we went in and we saw Dude, Where's My Car?
Oh God.
I was very I knew I was going to hate it and I hated it.
Yeah.
And I got really upset that somebody while watching that movie, they didn't know
Thought
they were about to bump into me.
no.
But they had that thought and they were like, Chris is going to bloody
This is
love
Chris.
this.
Dude, where's my car? That's Chris all over. Is what they thought. I don't think I've
Uh,
ever seen Dude, Where's My Car. It is a great comedy title. I will use that as a
yeah.
punchline title in all
Yep.
kinds of
Yep.
things. But
Mm.
yeah.
That whole flurry of the new guy and whatever Ryan Reynolds was doing at the time, there were these just your teenage comedies. A few of them piggybacked
Mm,
American Pie and things
yeah.
like that, and they all were the same formula and they all went the same way. And I was busy going through no, I want to watch art house films.
Yeah.
Like that was my sort of, I want to go watch some French bullshit. That was a phase I was going through at the time. So the total opposite of dude, where's my car?
All right. All right. I'll move on to you're talking about prestigious things. I'll move on to some prestige TV. I tried Deadwood. People said Deadwood
Oh,
Deadwood would be good. I tried Deadwood. I
mm.
could not get into Deadwood. I tried. No, sorry. Deadwood, no good. For me.
Deadwood,
For
no
me.
good.
For me.
Yeah,
All these
yeah, yeah,
things are
yeah.
in my personal opinion.
Mm. I really liked Deadwood. I told myself I would rewatch it again one day, and I still haven't.
Mm.
I was crazy enough to buy the Deadwood poker set, DVD poker set,
Yep.
which so it came in a
And it came with all celebrities to play poker with you, Jason Alexander's. Yeah.
yes. It was a this was back when JB Hi-Fi, like when they worked out that people would just buy the just crap as
Yep.
long as it had a DVD in it somewhere.
Yes.
A giant wooden box, you open it up, there's your 3 DVDs. Here, pack of cards, poker chips, have at it. I
Yep.
still have that giant thing somewhere in the house, taking up space. Here's another one. This is probably also from around 2001. I'd get to uni every week in the advertising TAFE course that I was doing down at Sunshine, and my classmates would come in every Friday and talk about last night's episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This massive fandom around
Mm.
Buffy and Angel, and my partner, she loved the show. She's rewatched it several times,
Yep.
and I just think it's this fascinating thing of something that was in its earlier seasons. Yeah, my classmates would come in, and all they talked about was the love drama, the
Mm.
what's going on, and then I feel like by the end of it, there's this Joss Whedon fan that has since been cultivated. That
Yes.
this He'd mastered this sort of perfect combination of TV, teenage love interest, but kind of nerdy, but
Mm.
very accessible.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want it. It just felt disingenuous. So I'm throwing Joss Whedon and whatever other things he came up with at the time in the bin.
I think a few people have thrown Joss Whedon in the bin over the past few years.
Yeah, it's just more recently, yes, for personal reasons, he's definitely in the bin. But also Dr. Horrible's sing-along
Yeah.
vlog. I remember a
Yep.
lot of people were coming at me and telling me how amazing that was, and that
I have that somewhere and I've never watched it. But
yeah,
people were telling me, oh, you'd really like this. And I have not been interested enough to ever actually watch it, but I have it somewhere.
yep. Yeah, it's another really interesting time with media is starting to live online. That was purely
Mm.
just a website,
Yeah.
but it had Neil Patrick Harris. It had some
Mm.
production, and I think I was probably being a bit of a snob at the time, going, "Oh, I don't want to watch some internet shit."
Yeah, I never really got into Buffy either. I had a few people who I knew who liked it
Yep.
and I kind of feel again similar. It should be something that I sort of like. I don't mind a little bit of teen soapy drama, and I don't mind a bit of vampires and
Yep.
quippy back and forth, and it
Yeah.
sounds good. I
Yep.
I watched
Yep.
I don't know half the first like eventually I was convinced enough to rent a DVD from the DVD store and chuck it in and have a look and just like, oh yeah, didn't hate it, but it's just like,
Mm.
not going to bother watching any further. I think that'll do me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
I'm with you on the Buffy stuff.
Yes. And P.S. Little note here. Dr. Horrible would go on to win the Hugo Award in 2009 for Best Dramatic Presentation. And I promise you, I had written down Buffy, Angel, and Dr. Horrible in my list before I'd even done that research. So
Yeah.
this podcast will always find a way. What else have you got, Dan?
I've got one more, and it's a very minor
Yep.
one. It's one you've discussed previously earlier.
Oh God.
Not
Kick me in the guts
today, but
again.
in previous episodes. And I don't dislike it. I just don't like it as much as I feel I should do. Like it's got all the elements I should love. I should adore this, and I just
Okay.
mostly like it. I watched it all, but it just didn't quite work as I feel it should. And that is The Good Place.
Okay.
I watched it.
Interesting.
I watched the entire thing, but there's something about it that always felt a bit clunky. I felt a bit like the plot was felt too plot driven. I can't even describe what didn't quite work for me, but I kept
Yep.
watching it and I watched it all the way to the end, and it was mostly just oh well, I've gone far enough now. I might as well finish this off. It's only 4 seasons or whatever it is, but I didn't
Yep.
love it. I wanted to love it, and I didn't.
Yeah, right. Do you think, because you're right, it does move at a rapid pace. It was almost made for that Netflix,
Yeah, binge.
that the little button that comes
Yeah.
up in the corner that's
Yep.
ready to, so that you get, that the cliffhanger into the next
Yeah.
thing. And it never really settles into a status quo.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the next
Just
thing
keeps
is
moving
always
along.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I get that. I
Which
do. I
which that
think.
which, that doesn't bother me in other things though. So I'm not
Yep.
quite sure. Maybe my brain
Hmm.
was still thinking this should just be a sitcom, and all sitcoms just revert to the status quo, as you say. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Don't know.
Interesting
But
one.
perfectly good, just not as great as I wanted it to be.
Yep. Fair enough. Okay, my last one is a bit weird, so bear with me. Do you know the Angry Video Game Nerd?
No, is this a
From
YouTube channel?
This is a YouTube channel. It started in 2004. Just a guy who, you know, was dressed up a little bit as a, nerdish looking guy, and he's essentially a short-tempered and foul-mouthed gamer who delivers commentary on retro games of poor quality. While the series began with the host, I think his name was James Rolfe, simply playing games and providing commentary, the show has grown in scope to encompass sketches and guest characters and reviews of gaming consoles and short lectures about video game history and culture. It's kind of like the birth of, I don't know, internet criticism,
Hmm.
people playing games and just hanging out and listening to other people talk about them
Yep.
over time. It's very homemade, which works for YouTube.
Yep.
But audiences come in, and why this is on my list is because these there are a lot of people here that just they end up. This is 2004, 20 years later. He's still going. He's had offers from other companies and come and do a TV show or
Yeah.
whatever, and just
Be
gonna
angry
keep
on
doing this.
television.
Yeah, just gonna do this TV, just do this thing on YouTube, and I didn't know about it.
Mm.
And I only discovered it kind of recently, and I was like, wait, there's been a YouTube channel where they discuss old video games, and an older version of me would have loved watching a guy swear and
Yep.
tear apart an old video game. But I'm also kind of glad I never got into it, because this also kind of feels like the beginning of things like Gamergate and just
Yeah.
weird
Yeah.
dudes angry that girls are into video games as
Yep.
well. It's that kind of space.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I also kind of hate it. And it brought me on to this other kind of cautionary tale, Channel Awesome, which is a YouTube channel.
Right.
Have you heard this before?
No.
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 There's a guy called Doug Walker, and he called himself the Nostalgia Critic.
Hmm.
Now he doesn't have a bachelor in whatever. He worked at Circuit City. He got fired, and he's like, I'm going to make a YouTube video where he puts some glasses on. He calls himself the Nostalgia Critic,
Hmm.
and he just reviews movies. But again, he has friends come in, and then they become characters, and there's this ever expansive universe for people to sink their teeth into.
Right.
And then he's suddenly that other guy that had popped up in a thing, he's got a channel now, and
Right.
people are
Yeah.
watching it, and it's a whole network.
Mm.
And it all started from just one guy that called himself the Nostalgia Critic, but that the reviews are bad. Like he's misinterpreting things. He doesn't know what subtext is. But
Yeah.
this is where we are from 2007 to now. This is why we're so media illiterate.
Yeah.
And
He might
you
even
can't.
dislike the constant. That's how crazy he might be.
Yes, yes, but it's sort of, again, it seems like it sort of sowed the seeds for
Yeah.
nobody to understand what context, subtext, any of this thing. It just was like, well, anyone can be a critic now. And what happened is quite funny in retrospect, is that, hey, the way that money works on YouTube back then, there's no other middleman. It's straight
Mm.
to the person that's doing it.
Yeah.
So they start making their own movies with all their weird characters, right? And I've seen some, like, every year they would make a movie, and they just, I don't know, to be some bullshit about whatever Easter eggs they started dropping in the skits that they would do in their reviews. And then, like, just if you just stripped out any of the good writing in a really good superhero movie, and you just took all the bits that make people cheer,
Yeah.
and it's just slop. Like, there's nothing good about it, but people loved it.
Yeah.
And this guy got so like he just enjoyed the smell of his own farts so much He put all of his money that he'd made into actually having a crack at a TV show that he
Right.
called Demo Reel, where he's like, all the skits and all the funny stuff that I do that people love so much, I'm going to put it into an actual series. And he can't write. He's terrible. Like, and people, the show, the thing would eventually would come out.
And
Nobody
did
bought
people
it.
review his show?
Yes, there are an unlimited number of documentaries about the rise and fall of Channel Awesome, the
Yep.
Nostalgia Critic, a cautionary tale of just, that for me, I found out about it after the fact.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did this whole thing happen around all this stuff that I like that I probably would, how did it happen and I didn't know it?
Yeah.
What was I doing? When you find out how big these things are.
Oh, it's because the internet is infinite. Like there's so much
Yes.
shit out there.
Yes, yes. So there are some good documentaries and stuff on because of course what else happens when you get famous? You have actual responsibilities.
Hmm.
And so there was this controversy when like a dozen or so production staff and producers just left and they dropped a public Google Drive called Not So Awesome, which just had all the dirt on the guy about
Yeah.
like every time they tried to make a movie, he'd have a pass at one of like awful
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing to come out of it is a reviewer named Lindsay Ellis. So the one person got swept up in all of this is a very, very good and a very smart writer and reviewer and critic called Lindsay Ellis. I recommend her series on the Transformers movies, the Michael
Okay.
Bay
Yep.
Transformers movie. So what she's done is she's reviewed all of those movies, but through the lens of feminist film theory.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely fantastic. It's called The Whole Plate,
Right.
and it's a brilliant, brilliant look at modern cinema and cinema of this time that
Yeah.
we're reviewing. So I will share that link as well. She's got multiple episodes. She's very, very good. So I essentially discovered Lindsay, and then
Mm-hmm.
I found the whole backstory and was
Yep. So
baffled
you
by
went
the
the
whole
other
thing.
way around.
I did. I went the other way around.
So should we flip this? Should we reveal things that we love that other people are perhaps dismissive of? Because I've got
I'm
a
not
few of
sure.
those.
If you share them with me, I'll see if I can think of some on the
All
spot,
right.
Dan.
So the way I did this, there is this great website called Flickchart, FLICK
Okay.
chart,
Yes.
CHART. And what it does, it just pops up two movie posters, and
Okay.
it says, which one do you like better, this movie or this movie? And you can also say, no, haven't seen it or haven't seen either of them. And it will just keep doing that. And you do it enough. And it's kind of, relaxing. You do it in front of the TV. You just go, yep, that one, that one, that one. And it starts ranking them all for you. And you eventually just get like this massive list of where all the movies you've watched rank in order. So I've got my own flick chart, and I've got 1,000 movies in there or something, all ranked roughly where they all belong. And that's how I found this, because I started going through them and go, all right, what would people go, oh my God, really, Dan? If they saw? And in my top 100, I'll tell you the big ones. On my list of the top 100, I have Deep Blue Sea, the movie with the super intelligent sharks. I love that movie. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's brilliant. I love it.
I haven't seen that one. I'll write that
Got to
for
see
homework.
it. All right, you've got to watch all these.
Yep.
The Cable Guy, Jim Carrey. That's Jim Carrey's best movie, and it's not even close. The Cable
Really?
Guy, Jim Carrey,
Really?
Matthew Broderick. Absolute classic. My brother and I love it. We used to, when this came out in the mid-90s, and we used to watch it, I don't know how, every few months we'd just go down and watch it together and just laugh and laugh and laugh. So stupid.
Things
so
have been
funny.
written. A lot of things have been written about that movie because it is trying to do a few more things than your average.
Yeah, it's
Jim Carrey,
Ben
yeah.
Stiller was directing.
Yes,
Ben Stiller of
yes.
Severance fame these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Loved the Cable Guy. Loved it before it was cool to love the Cable Guy.
Yep.
And the other one I've got on my list, which a lot of people didn't like it, didn't do well at the box office, killed an entire cinematic universe. But I am a massive fan of the Flash movie. Enjoyed the Flash, thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Loved the Flash running around. Main actor may not be the coolest person in the world,
No.
but the movie itself, quite enjoyed. So there you go.
I lost track of the Flash movie or movies. The most recent one where they tried to sew everything together, was that a sequel or was
No, that
that
was
the
it. There was
Flash
just the
movie?
one Flash movie.
Okay, so this is the one that's got Nick
Michael Keaton.
Cage as and yes, and Michael Keaton is in
Yeah.
it, and you get a flash of that mysterious Nicolas Cage was supposed to be Superman
Yes.
one
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and
All
he's
that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's
in
just
the
like, yeah,
Easter egg and
fine.
things like
Whatever.
that.
I know it's
Yep.
fan service. I don't care. I'm a fan. I love it all. Give it to me. So yeah, so they're my ones that I like, and I don't care if nobody else likes them. I like them. They're good.
That's great, Dan. That's thank you for sharing. I've got heaps, and it's probably pretty much everything I've included in list within the list.
Bad eggs.
Bad eggs, anything to do with Tony Martin,
Yeah, fair enough.
Sizzletown, and also I get on about I try and get people to watch pro wrestling occasionally, and people go, what? Like the WWE stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, like there are other, there's Japan, there's other places you can go where they tell stories in very different ways, and
Mm.
it's not drama and I'm going to steal your girlfriend and all that kind of stuff that you kind of get on your WWE. But I'll get on my high horse
Yeah.
about that sometimes, and but I think that's a great way to close out the. Although sorry, Dan, I do have a few apologies if you'd
Oh, yeah,
like
okay.
to our original list. So just a
Mhm.
few apologies here. I've got Cheese, Flight Simulators, Suits, the TV show, Dirty Dancing, Guinness, Formula One Racing, The Godfather, shout out to Kat, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, Minecraft, Suits, The Garment, The Lion King, Titanic, Twix Chocolate Bars, Top Gun, and Ted Lasso. So
Okay.
those are a
Yeah,
few of
I've
mine.
never watched Ted Lasso. I have zero interest in it. So I
Now that we've done list within the list, Dan, I know I promised you my number one, but
mm,
before we do that,
oh,
I do have a surprise for you. So
okay.
if you'll come with me, and we are back. So Dan, I've brought you over to the barracks. We're back in Dharmaville.
Yep.
Now we're in front of a door here. This is the door to the magic box,
Oh,
right?
the magic box.
That's
Oh,
right.
exciting.
I've got a surprise for you, Dan. We talked about the Lost Ninja,
If
right?
it's my dad, I'll be so annoyed.
No. I hope it's not your dad. That would be weird. But no, we've talked about the Lost Ninja on this podcast.
Yeah.
He was at Channel 7. He had all the secrets. He knew everything behind the scenes. And I've been desperately trying to find him. And I finally got, if you'd like to open the door, we can
Yep.
now reveal, here he is. It's the Lost Ninja.
The Lost
Welcome,
Ninja.
welcome,
Yeah.
Tom. Welcome to
Hi
luckily
everyone. Thanks so much for tracking me down.
it's so awesome to have you on board, Tom. I was as I often do in this podcast, down a rabbit hole because of this. Obviously, this podcast is about Lost, so I was down a very deep rabbit hole about alternate reality games and the like. And I couldn't believe that the Channel 7 website in Australia was getting referenced as this huge part of this global experience, and so much so that it had its own dedicated blogger, and that was you.
Yeah, that was me. It was a wild experience. I had no idea what was coming for me, but it really blew up, and I just hung on for dear life. Had a great time, but it
Yeah.
lasted years.
Can you talk to us how, like, what were you doing? Did you already have a role at Seven? Like, what was happening in your career when this came along?
Yeah, sure. Look, I was originally at Pacific Magazines. I was writing articles for various teen magazines and stuff, and then I got asked by Channel 7, who were their parent company, if I could write some recaps for the first season. And they went really well. And at the same time I was doing that, Channel 7 merged with Yahoo. So suddenly we
That's
had
right.
all this internet presence, and I shifted over and quickly became, I was running the movies site. But my work on the recaps was really appreciated and noticed by some of the guys in the States that were working on the program and working on their websites and stuff. So when the Lost experience started coming together, I can share plenty of secrets, but some stuff is still technically under NDA.
Oh, okay.
It was being managed by a firm over in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And they had one of the writers from the show, Harvey, we'll call him. Harvey was the dedicated writer for the Lost Experience, and then I got looped in to represent the rest of the world, essentially. And it was kind of decided that my character, which was the Lost Ninja, would unofficially be Claire's cousin.
Wow, so I didn't even know that.
That's deep canon.
So does that mean you're Jack's half cousin?
Yes, technically I'm part of the Shepherd family in some very weird way. But yeah, they approached us and said, look, we're looking for a third partner in this, and we feel that you guys have already got a really strong presence in Australia, and because of the storyline aspects of the show starting in Australia and everything, it just really made sense for the story to have a presence in Australia, and I was super keen for it. The condition told to me by Yahoo was that I got to work on it in my own time.
Yes, okay.
And I thought that wouldn't be a big problem, and I was wrong.
Oh no!
It very quickly ballooned in scope, and there were a lot of Verizon, Sprite. There were a lot of sponsors involved, so it suddenly sprawled further and further across the internet. And basically, the first Lost Experience, which ran between series 2 and 3, consumed my life for about 4 months.
Wow! So it's almost like Channel 7 didn't believe in the power of online and digital and things that were happening off the TV screen. They said, okay, fine, you can do it. But this is your project, like they almost didn't know what they had, I guess, because the fan response was pretty crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, it was insane. So the recaps for the first season were really strong, and I managed to convince the guys at Channel 7 to give me a video producer, so that we could create a video that would show, that we'd post to the site with a recap at the end of the episode. And I don't know how I managed to do this, but I convinced them to give me 15 seconds of airtime at the end of the episode during the credits, saying, if you go to the website, you can find out a bit of a clue what's going on.
Oh, wow.
And that was all well and good for the first 2 episodes of season 2. Didn't do too much. Episode 2 was when the shark went past the screen and it had a Dharma logo on the tail.
Yes. Yeah.
And we got a big reaction for that. Episode 3 was stuff with the hatch, and I still to this day hold the record for causing the most traffic to hit late night Yahoo that it took down Yahoo.
Wow.
We crashed the entirety of Yahoo. Yeah,
that's amazing. So hang on, let's hang on a sec. So season 2 episode 3, that's what we're saying, where at the end of that episode, so that would be orientation, a very lore heavy episode. Incredible. And then so obviously everyone was like, yes please, I'd love some more information on all this on
this crazy hatch.
Yes. And at this point, Channel 7 was airing the episodes, I want to say 4 months after where they were at the States, or somewhere we were quite a way behind. So I had the episodes for a long time, and I could dissect them and really work with them and stuff like that. That leeway lessened quite dramatically to the end. Whereas by the end of season 6, I think I got the last 2 episodes. I got 4 hours early.
Yeah,
that's okay. Okay, so Dan has told a story about how Dan saw the first episode quite a few months ahead because someone in the US had shared it with him.
Sure.
Here you are, you're getting all the episodes months in advance. What was that like? You couldn't talk to anyone about it, obviously. Like I assume no other eyeballs. I was under these.
I was under the most crazy NDAs, and even my video producer, I couldn't tell him why I was requesting certain things be highlighted, so I could only share with him a 30-second clip to be cut up and used, and couldn't quite explain why he needed to highlight certain things. That was season 3 was where that really sort of ramped up of me getting a bit of inside knowledge. Season 4 is where I started to get the scripts a few months early.
Oh wow.
And I had to basically burn them. You know,
Wow.
they arrived under lock and key. I had to read them in a secure room by myself. I still have one that I maybe didn't discard properly. I held on to. It was the first episode of season 4, which was the beginning of the end, the Hurley episode. I have such a soft spot for Hurley, and I love a Camaro, so I hung on to that script because it was a beauty. But yeah, it was this crazy thing where I knew more than most. I couldn't talk about it more than, you know, I really had to keep it to myself. And yet every week I had to write between 1,000 and 3,000 words about what might be going on, even though I knew even further out. So it was, I went kind of insane.
I'm picturing you in your alone, like in the 7 office, and there's the AFL team, and there's or even Pac Mags is still there, and the women's mags are still massive, and then you're in the corner in your own little cubicle, just obsessed with Lost, and the papers everywhere, and everyone's like, "What's Tom up to?" Oh, I don't know. So that TV show.
100% that I ended up getting a corner spot just simply because I needed to have screens that pointed away from everybody else.
Wow.
And I actually got called into Yahoo HR because we were doing a photo shoot one day as the Lost Ninja, and I brought a katana to work.
Okay.
And HR had some very strong feelings about that. I didn't quite understand what we could do with Photoshop.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm all for authenticity. So these so the Lost experience specifically, they approach you, or they reach out to Australia because all the blog work is going so well. What are those meetings like? Like, I know now it's so easy to get on a Zoom call, and I'd love to picture you and a bunch of Lost writers sitting on a Zoom call, but 20 years ago it was probably very different. But yeah, what were some of those meetings? Were you on the phone with some of the creative minds?
Yeah, look, as I say, Harvey was the main contact point for us, and the Lost experience was kind of siloed a little bit away from the show, but he at the time was kind of the master of the lore. So he knew everything and could tie it in. And
is it worth mentioning it's on Lostpedia, so I don't want to, I'm going to say this, but it does say that Javier Grillo Marchors, who I assume is the fellow you're talking about, and I've butchered his name, apologies. He wrote 7 episodes of the show, so he's quite so that's who you're working with, is someone who contributed quite a lot to the show as a whole, which that's incredible.
Yeah, it was such a crazy kick. As I say, he knew all the secrets at that time, and he wasn't sharing everything with us, but he was pointing us in the right direction. And especially when it came to the Lost experience, he was sharing everything with us so that we could, we were the public face. So there was myself, the Lost Ninja, there was Speaker, he was the US guy, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what the UK lady was named because she was a construct. She wasn't a real person. She was the agency running it.
Okay. Yep.
And I ended up becoming really, really good friends with Andy, aka Speaker, to the point where I've met up with him a couple of times over in the States. We've gone for beers because no one else gets what we went through. It was such a unique experience. For me, it was a lot of 3 a.m. phone calls with the States and the UK, trying to arrange things. And I wasn't contributing too much to the storyline, the overarching storyline, but I was very much involved in how it was being disseminated and how we would get those messages out. And it was, they were very strange meetings. As you say, no Zoom, nothing like that. It was literally sitting on a conference call waiting for people to ring in from the States at 3 a.m. in the morning, sitting in the dark office by myself.
HR wondering who's been in the building till 3 a.m. We should talk about the story of the experience. I've got some brief notes here, but from what I understand, there were like 4 phases, and that first phase is like some fake commercials airing on Channel 7. because the
Yes.
story was about the Hanso Foundation and somebody trying to understand the connections between Hanso and Dharma, and so it's really off to the side of what the show was doing at that point because it's still very character driven. But yeah, in this first phase, you've got fake commercials. You've got this guy, Hugh McIntyre from the Hanso Foundation, appearing on Jimmy Kimmel. So in the States, they're going all in. And then this
Yeah.
Persephone hacking into the website, and so that was kind of like the big thing at the beginning, right? Like this person is hacking in and trying to understand the mysteries of Hanso. Are you
Yes.
getting this kind of content and you're trying to work out how to, like, what's happening on your side of the fence when these things are coming to you?
All right. So at this stage, a big part for me was making sure those ads ended up on TV in Australia because they were made for America and they weren't paying particularly for them to be here in Australia. So I had to, grease some palms and really call in some favors to make sure they got out there. But the way it got explained to me is that the 4 stages we're talking about, 4 phases, very much acted like a funnel. That first funnel is you wanted to make as much noise as possible to get anyone who might be interested in. And then as the story progressed, it got far more involved and time intensive, laborious, whatever you want to call it. But it required a lot more of the players.
Yeah, more dedication.
Correct.
Yeah, I remember when I was listening to the official podcast towards the end of season 2, Damon and Carlton were actually, engaging in some mock, some kind of mock feud with the Hanso Foundation. So,
yes.
so it was all around the place.
Yes, and look, I'll be very honest. By the time that first stage was going out, we were already knee deep in working on phase 2 and making sure that all the a lot more hands-on elements and stuff that was hidden was already in place, because we very quickly learned this was about a year after the Halo Bees ARG, which at the time was the biggest one that happened, and we very quickly learned that people were smart, much smarter than you would expect, and they would go down the rabbit hole and dig everywhere, find things that weren't related, and confuse the rest of the audience. So we had to spend a lot of time actually dissuading people from certain theories and certain directions where they've gone down the wrong rabbit hole.
Dig up, stupid.
But being really pleasant and nice. Yes.
Yeah. Because you end up, there's all these new characters, and obviously they had to, cast all these people. Dan and I had a bit of a laugh at one of the other ARGs, which was Find 815.
Yes.
That the result of that one was somebody piloting that little craft under the ocean to find the fake oceanic plane, and that ended up being Roger Corsa, which is hilarious
to us. It was just when he was getting started and stuff, he hadn't had too much stuff pop yet, so he kind of got hired as a bit of an unknown, and then while that was coming out, he started appearing in, I can't remember, some police drama, and people hang on,
it might have been close to the Underbelly. I feel like that might have been his.
Yes, that's it.
In Underbelly. We like to think that he auditioned for Grant Bowler's freighter captain role and was perhaps knocked back, but still on file as someone they could work with.
Yes.
Now the third stage, there was this. So the character of Rachel Blake, she's trying to hack into the website, and she's digging around, and there's all these Hanso operatives, but she makes it to 2006 San Diego Comic-Con, where she they bring it into real life, and she stands up in the middle of a Comic-Con panel and starts yelling out about, we want the truth and you should go to hansoexposed.com. Please tell, did you get to the Comic-Con, or were you just having to hear about this from Australia?
I was there.
Oh,
yeah. I went, I think 3 years in a row for Lost Panels.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was able to piggyback it because, as I said, I was working for Yahoo Movies, so I would go across and cover the general con, and
Yep.
then just make sure that I got a good pass to go and cover the lost stuff. But that was a pretty electric moment where I'll say a good half of the crowd were deeply involved in the lost experience, and it was mind blowing. They weren't ready for that to happen.
That's very cool.
Yeah, there's a video online, and you can hear, you can see that exact moment. And when she says her name, the amount of people that react even louder, like you're the person from the thing I've been following. It's incredible.
Look, I'll give the credit to everybody. They thought of everything. You know, Find 815 was a fantastic second experience, but that first one was so special because they had big sponsors involved, so they had a lot of money to work with, and the writers were really keen on making sure that this one stuck the landing. The way it was originally sold to me is they wanted to use the Hanzo Foundation and basically this first Lost experience to kind of do a few episodes worth of the show's storytelling if a random scientist walked up on the beach and wanted to explain the history of the island.
Right.
So it wasn't something that could fit within the narrative and world of the show, but it would be something that for people that were very invested in the show would click instantly of, oh, I get this. This is enriching the world and bringing more to the story I love. And so by, as you say, having moments where it crosses over to the live world, it became real, and it became something that just sort of transcended an online experience where so many people were really, really committed and jumping in every week. And, you know, it was happening when the show wasn't on, so people were ravenous for more Lost content. Having that sort of live element, having interactions with one another fans and stuff like that, and sharing what they knew, it was just crazy.
And I think this stage, that it resulted in like a 60-minute video, which again is crazy dedication. They created a 60-minute video, but they cut it into 1-minute pieces, and you had to find all the codes to get that video back together. And apparently some of them were even in the real world, like in a field somewhere. Was it anything in Australia, or was that just in, I'm going to assume one of those was definitely in America?
Yes, look, most of the real world go and find the clue. I think there was 2 in London, and there was a couple scattered through the States.
Yeah, okay.
We, because of the time zone differences, largely, we kept our stuff online, and that you know that was made more sense to Yahoo, that would be the place that we would disseminate our stuff. They wanted people having that traffic online. We did have other real world elements, but the actual video clip stuff we kept to, you know, where we could manage hiding within code on sites that we were connected to.
You mentioned real world. Is this the Apollo bars, Tom?
Yeah, look, we had 2 things. We had the Apollo bars. I got sent 5,000 Apollo bar chocolates from the
What did they taste like? What real world chocolate do they taste like? I assume you ate one.
I'm not going to oversell. I did. I ate a few. They weren't the best fancy chocolate. They weren't your dairy milk level.
No.
I'm going to say Birdie Beetle.
Right. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So
I don't feel
nice
so
chocolate.
bad about missing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. A great thing to get in a show bag, but not something you're going to go and pay money for.
Mocklet.
I still have some of them, and one of them ripped open a few years ago, and they are white as buggery. They are no good these days, but I still see them pop up on eBay from time to time. So,
oh wow,
don't bid on them.
No, I don't think you'd. Yeah. Now we were in one of our episodes. I was going through how, you know, these elements that touched Australia, including the Apollo bars that were at some comic book stores, and then apparently there were a few locations where if you went and said the phrase, "What did one snowman say to another?" you know, you'd be given an Apollo bar, and they were at these random locations. I've got to ask, did anyone ever take, you know, did it bleed through into Australia? Did that happen? I think one of them was at the museum.
The 5,000 chocolates I sent out to comic book stores in Australia, and basically sent foot traffic into the stores to go and ask for the snowman.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah.
I heard back from comic stores every day that they were having 30 to 50 people come in each day.
Wow.
Some of them buying stuff, but some of them just walking straight up to the desk and saying, like, having a bit of a look around, checking over their shoulder, and then leaning in and saying, "What did one snowman say?" And get their chocolate. So we did that with the chocolate, and we also got given. I think I had 100 copies of. They did a tie-in book called Bad Twin.
Yes, we've discussed Bad Twin.
Yep.
Yes,
fantastic. And Gary Troop, and we had I had copies of that to give away, and I made that one more involved. And I think it was Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. I sent copies to some of the comic stores in other places, but in those 3 cities, there were a few geographic drops that I put around the city of if you could follow these, and they formed a pentagram, and at the center of the pentagram would be a museum. If you museum and talk to the front desk, then you might be able to claim one of those books. And I sat quietly in the museum for an afternoon that I dropped it and watched all 20 copies that I had go in an hour.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Right. So you'd worded up the poor reception person at the information booth or whatever some people are going to come and ask you some weird questions.
Yep. And I'd gone and slipped them a lot of chocolate and said, here's the deal. We're doing this, and we're talking 2007. So ARG didn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah.
It was, we're playing a crazy internet game. This is follow the clues and win a prize. We'd love your help. We're going to be sending a lot of people into you. And most places were super keen to get involved because for them, it was just the novelty of being tied into this massive show that everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's incredible. Like, I get the idea of just viral marketing in general would have its day, years later with various iterations of things like this, but nothing as involved and as meticulously crafted as it sounds like this particular experience was, and to have multiple countries all working on it together, it's absolutely amazing.
I can tell you that the spreadsheet to manage it would boggle your mind of how many tabs and how deep it went of every single element to make sure that everything got handled was unruly.
Amazing.
Yeah. And are you passing information back and forward with Harvey, with the team in the US?
Very much so. So I was having calls once a week with the wider team and Harvey. I spoke with Harvey a bit more throughout stuff, but Andy Speaker, he and Harvey were actually friends in real life and stuff like that. And he was, I think he was running Harvey's forums or something at the time. So he was able to feed me a lot of direct information as well. And that was invaluable. The one that was the most fun is, so Harvey was the man behind DJ Dan, the conspiracy theorist, and would do the live radio shows. And this is, right as podcasting was starting to kick off, but the idea of doing a live podcast was insane. And what started out as a very tightly controlled part of the narrative very quickly became a loose party for everyone. And, all the listeners would listen live, and then Andy and myself would stay on afterwards and I would DJ. Like, I had decks. I would literally DJ music for a couple of hours, and everyone would chat about what we just learned and things like that. And it was awesome.
That's very cool.
Wow. So the podcast just kept streaming. For hours.
Because we would normally do it on, I think it was late Friday night their time. So that's Saturday afternoon for us. So it was a good time for everyone to just kick back and relax. And
Dan, are you getting envious of this party, this experience? That
sounds like the best job in the world.
Yeah, because we love the show, but I talked about this before, that I loved it. I had people that talked about it, and then my brain would switch off, and I'd go home and like I love this. Like, I love this type of stuff, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I never got involved to this level, back then. But obviously there were plenty of people diving in and sharing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, look, we had fantastic, passionate fans. Thankfully, none of them were what you'd consider crazy fans. There was no one trying to track me down or anything like that. It was,
Until Chris
just,
showed up.
Yes, it's
I know. And it was still back when the internet was a pretty positive place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there was a lot of safe space, and it was a place for nerds, and we were the nerdiest game in town. And so we attracted everyone that had just finished watching Buffy and all that, and Farscape and all these different shows that had these super committed online forums. Suddenly we progressed from a forum to something that had live shows and had interactive elements and had mysteries to solve. And so it just became this haven for all these different niche cliques and communities. And it was lovely. People were so positive, and people were so generous with their feedback towards us and letting us know how much they loved this, and people telling us, it was fantastic to have something to latch on to. The second one especially was when the GFC happened, and we had a lot of people telling us that it was so wonderful to have something that in the virtual world they could lean into to distract themselves from what was going on in their life because of financial hardships and stuff like that. That sticks with you, it's random weird feedback to get, but it really does stick with you. It's like, okay, maybe this did have a bit more impact than I thought.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of meeting people, it looks like you also maybe met a few of the cast members over the years. Over time, you got to meet a couple of people.
I did. I was very lucky. So in Australia, we had Matthew Fox, Evangeline Lilly, and Dominic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the big guns.
And I had, yes. So I can't. I want to say season 3, maybe. I can't quite remember. And I'll let you guess which, but 2 of them were super lovely, and one of them was not.
Okay. I think some Googling would sort that out.
I think so. I think anyone that's maybe read some behind the scenes stuff can probably put 2 and 2 together. They were great, and then I was super lucky. I went across to Hawaii a couple of times I went over for I want to say season 3 and 4 premieres, and just another time to hang out on set and record various bits and pieces of TV interstitials and stuff that we could use for ads and things like that. And I won't speak out of turn, but I had a very good night out on the town with Jorge.
Okay.
Yep. He took quite a shining to me, and took me under his wing a little bit when I was over there. Made sure I had a good time. And the first time I met him, I walked up to say hello and shake his hand, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you're that Lost Ninja guy. I know you." I was like, all right,
fantastic.
All right, this is fantastic. So and Michael Emerson is exactly as unsettling in real life as you would expect. He's the loveliest man, but you can't look at him and not think of all the horrible characters he's played.
The level of intensity there. We can't let it skip past that you just mentioned the set, or seeing some version of a set over in Hawaii. Like what are we talking about here? Just some trees, or a little Dharma action, or what did you actually see of the show behind the scenes?
I got to hang out in Otherville, which was pretty awesome.
Yep.
Nothing particularly special there. It's just cabins and some fake walls and stuff like that. I was on set the episode when which one is it? Let me just check. Episode 6 of season 3, which was I Do, the Kate episode, where we see that she was married to almost like with Nathan Fillion.
Yes.
I got to hang out with him in a hotel while he was waiting to film, and he was more excited to be there than I was.
That's very cool.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and a lot of the Dharma and especially the hatch sets were under such lockdown, pun
Yeah.
intended,
Right.
that I never got anywhere near that sort of stuff.
Yeah, fair enough.
And being that they were filming in Hawaii, it's quite different to like an LA or a London setup or something like that, where they had a lot of enclosed sets, but the rest of the time they were just using locations around Waikiki.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Luke. That's you've been to Otherville, to Dharmaville. That's awesome.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Dan, you've got some questions?
Oh, I guess I mostly just want to know overall, like, put aside all the work that you did on it. How did you feel about the show itself, and in particular the ending, which I know many people found controversial, but we obviously don't, but other people do. Just in general, what's your general vibe on the show looking back on it?
I've yet to find another show that I've loved or found as special. It holds such a huge place in my heart, and a lot of that is from watching the show, from writing about the show, but so much of it is the real genuine connections I made with people around the world, both working and pushing this community around and things like that. There hasn't been another show like it. People have tried, but we're never going to have that moment again. You know, it just hit at the perfect time of social media starting. To give you an idea of how long I've been working in social media, when I first started doing this stuff, we were doing things on LiveJournal and Friendster. Then we moved to MySpace, and Facebook came in on season 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was. I love it, and I loved the finale, and it was really difficult to watch that and then have to go and write about it critically, knowing so many people didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
When we had a viewing party at Yahoo 7, like at Yahoo, because we got the episode 4 hours early.
Yes.
And there was hardly a dry eye in the room, because everyone there knew how invested I was, and there were a couple of people that I dragged into the sphere by the end. My video producer, my producer, things like that. They were that invested with me, but the whole room could feel the emotion of what was going on. It was beautifully done, and I feel that the people that criticized the ending were only ever about the answers. They weren't about the journey, and the show was never about providing answers. That's what the Lost experience was for. That was my job. That was not the job of the TV show. You know, if you wanted those answers, come and talk to me afterwards. There was plenty of people like myself that could provide those answers for you, or tell you where to look. The show wasn't about that. The show was about those characters on the island and the journey they went through. And I just thought it was such a beautiful ending that, you know, after everything, they chose to, you know, live together, not die alone. And when they did die, they continued to live on together, passed on together. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Don't have to sell us on that one.
No.
You're already sold on that.
I mean, we're here doing a podcast about the show, but we specifically have been counting down the 10 highest rated, at least according to IMDb and a few other retrospectives and the like. And Dan and I have challenged ourselves to bring our own top 10 to this, and we've been counting that down. And of course, this whole thing kicked off because Dan has a very controversial opinion about The Constant. So we'd love to know, if you had a top 10, would The Constant be in it? That's the first thing we probably need to ask you about, Tom.
I think your better question is, how high up the list is it?
Oh, okay. Would you have a top 10 list of favorite episodes you'd be willing to share?
I do. I jotted some notes down when I was sitting in the box before you let me out.
Yeah.
I will preface this by saying that some of these are not going to be anyone else's favorites, but they hold a special place for me because of my work journey and stuff like that. And I think you'll very quickly see what my favorite characters are too.
Okay.
Because I don't. Number 10, and this might be controversial. Number 10 is Walkabout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's where Chris ranked it as well.
I put it, but I've since regretted that decision. But that is also my 10th highest rated episode, Walkabout.
It's what lured most people in. You know, it's what hooked so many people. the episodes before that were good, but that one made you go, whoa.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
So that's why I get that. Episode 9, as I said, was when I was on set with Nathan Fillion, the episode I Do.
Mhm.
It's not a great episode by any stretch. It's the last of the episodes of being locked in the cages on the island. And,
Yes.
Mhm.
you know, the
Damn it,
hold
Kate,
their
run.
biscuits. Yes. It's not a great episode, but I was there, so it gets on my list. Number 8 for me is Orientation,
Yes.
because again, that's kind of where things kicked off for me. That was strong. Number what's that? 7 is Lockdown.
Yes.
Great. Yes.
Got
Also in
a
my
few lockdowns in here. Yep.
yes, also
Okay,
in
good.
my top 10. Yep. I don't have Orientation, but I did say in my own top 10, I needed something that had some orientation film in it.
Yes.
Because one of my favorite parts of the show, just this, and especially that every time they discovered something, it was on a different media format.
Yes,
It
was
would
so
move
clever.
from 8mm to beta to something else. So, and then I love Lockdown because Locke is my Hurley. He's my character in this show.
Sure. Well, look, Lockdown's on my list because that was the episode that I got a box of chocolates from Yahoo IT the next day, because I didn't take the site down, and we'd crashed the site before they got new servers out of the deal. And this episode was the episode with the map and the black light.
Yes.
We had roughly 90,000 Australians come onto the website in about a 10-minute phase at 11 o'clock at night on a Thursday, and the site stayed up and everyone was happy. So
Incredible.
apart from being an excellent episode, that's my reason. Next, number 6 is The Beginning of the End, which is the Hurley episode, the first one back after we have to go back.
Yes.
And I just love that episode because we get to spend really good time with Hurley and his parents.
Yes.
And Cheech Maroon is a boss.
Yes, as I've said, they're the funniest people on the show, and
100%. Episode 5, I don't think this is controversial, but I'm going to go for it anyway, is LaFleur.
No, we both got LaFleur in our top 10s.
Yes,
we love LaFleur.
There's a shared top 10 episode.
That came at a point in the season where it was so sci-fi heavy, and I'd been tipped off in advance of, you basically need to go learn some quantum mechanics for this year. And they let me know in advance, hey, you're getting a week off this week. It's a beautiful romantic episode. And it just floored me.
A great episode.
To take Juliet, who at that point had no real romantic connection with him or anything like that, and then use 42 minutes to make you believe that they were meant to be together. Boy, it just stuck with me. So good.
Yeah. Best romance in the show, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yep.
I will second that.
Yep.
Number 4 for me is Live Together, Die Alone, because it's awesome.
Yep.
What more do you need? Number 3 is Catch 22. You'll notice a bit of a trend happening with Desmond.
Yes.
And again, that was around the time where I started getting fed a lot more stuff from the writers about, hey, you got to know some things about this and this to be able to explain what's happening. So I have very fond memories of that. Number 2 is Through the Looking Glass, because
game changer.
Amazing.
Yeah,
and
some of the best TV that's ever been on the screen. The stakes and the intensity and the will they escape? It's amazing.
And I will say, because they didn't tell me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was just about to ask whether you knew, but no.
That was one of the few things from when I got looped quite tightly in. That was one of the few things they kept from me.
Wow.
So that blew my mind just as much as everybody else.
I would be eternally grateful that you still got to have that moment the same as everyone else did.
That's it. Because if I'd known that in advance, it still would have been really cool. But
no, there's nothing like that moment when you see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, of course, leaves number 1 as constant. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You don't have to apologize at all.
No,
The
no,
constant is in
I'm
my
the
top
outlier
10.
here. I fully accept that I'm the outlier for not having it in my top 10. I know I'm the crazy one, but I'm willing to fight all comers.
That was, as I said, they told me I needed to learn some quantum mechanics, and I thought it was for a different episode, and then suddenly I discovered that it was for a beautifully romantic time traveling take on, body switching and stuff. It was so good.
Yeah, you had to go and learn about spatiotemporal travel.
I learned about some really weird stuff for this show. I didn't think I needed to know hieroglyphics, but turns out I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Wait. So hang on. Let's just do this. The first time you saw a statue, were you as equally in the dark? The 4-footed, the 4-toed statue. Were you equally in the dark as the rest of us?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they didn't know. Well,
Okay.
I wasn't
Okay.
told exactly what it would be, but I was told it would be important later, and it would be tied to something else big that was on the island.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Wow. So you knew way back then. That's crazy. That's great. That's great that they knew that back then, because I kind of thought, oh, maybe they just pulled that out of their butts. Who knows?
Plenty of it did get pulled out of the butts, and plenty of it did get tied together at the end, but they always knew that the Black Rock took out the statue.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. It makes me think now. Well, I have to ask. You would watch the episode. They're not telling you everything. You're not completely. You don't know everything. But when you're on those calls, like, how tempted are you to go? Okay, just one second. I really need to know about X, Y, or Z, or what's going on here. But Jeremy Bentham, yeah, you'd probably just have to bite your tongue, I guess, out of professionalism.
Out of professionalism, I often put myself on mute because they would hear me scrawling notes.
Oh.
It served me better to not know everything and to not ask every question, because that was the point of my blog. And as I said, I was jamming out 3,000 words a week, or 3,000 words an episode on stuff. If I knew the answer to everything, it made it really hard to go down the rabbit hole. And if I got told this is the right direction, then I could present option A, B, or C to the audience, rather than just, maybe it's this. So I did learn to bite my tongue quite often, and there were things that I wish I didn't know in advance, because it did change the tone of watching the few episodes leading up to it when I knew something was going to happen.
For example,
Mr. Echo.
Right. Yep.
Season 2 spent a long time setting him up in a big way.
Mm.
And season 3, I found out very early that he wouldn't be making it far.
Yeah. Right.
But on the flip side of that, they made a big deal about Nikki and Paolo to me, because they had plans.
Wow. And that's still locked up in your brain somewhere, something that you can't, those plans.
Yes.
Wow.
The things on those calls were pretty tightly locked down, and I haven't looked at my contract in years, but I feel like there's probably still a sniper with a dot on my forehead somewhere.
Yeah, not worth being taken out for this podcast, I don't think.
No, but there were things that they could pivot thanks to fan reaction, and the fan reaction was so visceral and strong very quickly. That
Expose is one of my top 10 episodes. I love Expose. I find it hilarious.
It too. The balls on that episode to do that.
Yeah.
And just to do a fun twist on. I'm going to say, what are the two characters that Rogers Hansen, Guildenstein or something? I can't remember.
Oh, Rosencrantz and Guildenstein. Yeah, we did discuss that. Yeah.
That's it. Yes. Just to play on that, and then have it go so horribly bad. Brilliant.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Yes. All right.
Well, it's been absolutely incredible talking to you. I have one more question, because you mentioned the kids earlier.
Yes.
you know, but and I don't know how old they are or anything like that. But at some point, you will be introducing them to this show, right? Like, is that a big? Are you
Sure.
nervous about that? Are they? And again, I don't know how old they are. What? Are they close to that age? Are they ready to see the show?
I've got a 12 and a 4-year-old.
Okay.
The 4-year-old's going to be a long way off. The
Yeah.
12-year-old will love it, but she's got that TikTok attention span that all kids do now. So I'm waiting.
I tried
a
to
little
get
bit.
my boys to watch it, and they stuck in till I don't know, about halfway through season 2, and then just like, we don't really want to watch this anymore. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Nah.
Hey, you're
We
not
will get to it.
curious. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a Christmas holiday. You know, when we've got a long break, let's sit down and do 3 to 4 episodes a day.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm going to have to sweeten the pocket money deal or something if we put our phones in the box.
That's a
Yep.
shame those Apollo bars went off.
Oh gosh. Well, look, the 12-year-old is a mini me, and she's very into the same things I am.
Yeah.
And very keen to go to Comic-Con and all this sort of stuff. So I know it's going to hook her.
Oh, great.
Fantastic. That's very good.
That's
Yep.
awesome. All right. Well, it's probably time to pop you back in the box, Tom, so that you can get back home. But again, a sincere thank you for chatting to us and letting us pull off the mask. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been wonderful. No one has asked me this stuff in many, many years. And I've been an anonymous man stuck in a box.
Excellent.
You're
Thanks so
free
much,
to go.
Tom.
You're free to go. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
And we are back. Dan, how good was that?
The ninja.
The ninja himself.
The Lost Ninja. That was so good.
Tom was absolutely fantastic. So thank you again to Tom for joining us. He's a legend. So now that business is taken care of.
All right. We've wrapped everything up. We're done.
Right? No, hang on. We can't go without talking about my number one. So did you want to have a crack, Dan, or should I just rip into it?
I just can't think of what it could be. I'm still leaning towards a Lock episode, but I can't think of which one it could be. I'm assuming it's an early season one, that like a season 1 or season 2. But I can't. Yeah, I don't know. Hit me. Tell me what you got.
We're actually going all the way to season 5. This
okay.
is the life and death of Jeremy Bentham.
There you go. Lock. Yeah. Should have guessed the Jeremy Bentham. Yes.
I sympathize with the man, and this is him at his absolute most tragic.
Yes.
So when we first started this podcast, like I mentioned, every time I think about Lost or I revisit it, I'm always thinking about this particular storyline, this narrative, that I can't believe the show did this to us. It gave us this man, this alternative hero to the kind of classic, Jack sort of archetype.
Yeah.
And in the end, it just a sucker and a loser. And why I love it so much is that you've got twists like the flash forward, right, which are incredible. That's a great twist where in the moment you do some quick maths and you solve it, and you're right where the show wants you to be.
Yeah.
At the end of season 5, when they reveal that it was Locke, in the casket, when they open it out on the beach and they're like, well, if that's Locke, who's in there?
Yeah.
It's the man in black is wearing his face, and that reveal is a real sort of slow burn, because you're like, oh, okay, that means the man in black. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, he can take other people's form. He needed Locke. He chose Locke. Okay, and then it just sort of you start to replay everything we've seen from him in this show, and I've mentioned. I had a friend that I worked with, and we'd talk about the show all the time. My friend Simon, he's the one where we spent an entire wedding just talking about Lost, and we missed the whole thing. We would text each other for years after this show ended, reminding each other about things that happened to John Locke and going, oh, hang on a second. Yeah, I just realized that this guy's father put him in a wheelchair, and and what a sucker and a loser. He was a patsy, this entire sort of thing. And so we would
Poor
send each
Locke.
other texts, and I texted Simon and I said, oh, I'm doing this podcast. I'm doing a rewatch, super fun. And this was the text I got back. He just sent it to me. He said, Sawyer, legend. Freckles, I get it. I'd make bad mistakes just hanging out with her. Jack, the embodiment of the notion of fighting against being a hero. Saeed, actual hero. Desmond, I get it. I'd make bad mistakes to hang out with him. Ben, a cosmic joke who is only beaten by Locke for being the biggest sucker in the show. Mr. Echo takes on the smoke monster with a stick. Legend. And that's how we saw the show, was that all of these characters had all these noble pursuits.
Yeah.
Except for John Locke, who everything this like rejected by his mother from birth,
Yeah.
or taken away. He dreams of being somebody or having this purpose, and for years he's got nothing. Then his father cons him out of a kidney. He meets Helen. He fucks up that entire thing.
Yep.
His father puts him in a wheelchair. He ends up in a box factory. And he's just in this place where he's like, what even is my life, purpose, any of that? And he lands on an island and he believes this is it. This is what it's all about.
Yep.
I've got purpose now. The island is telling me, and his faith is tested over and over and over again. But he goes with it, and he's right to, because the island is, it is a magic thing. It
Yeah.
did heal him. He is supposed to be the next, special person or whatever to take over, except that he's not. The only reason everybody thinks that is because he went back in time and told everyone that was going to happen. So
Yep.
all of that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And it's obviously the idea of the man in black that tells him after he pushes that he's got to turn the donkey wheel. You need to die. You need to bring them all back, and it's all part of the plan. And the more and more you think about, and every time you watch this show and you watch him go through all of that, you're like, this is all for nothing. This is this is just some man's plot. And I also think it's everybody else's story is really straightforward, but just think of how twisted the story of John Locke is. So I love untangling it. I love everything about it. He's essentially, a sucker and a fool.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to watch. And I get sadder and sadder every time I watch it. I've got some broad notes about this episode, if you'll indulge me, Dan. The life and death of Jeremy Bentham.
Well, do you want me to give the recap? Because I just searched my archives and I found what I wrote about the life and death of Jeremy Bentham. So I can do that as just
I'd love to hear
palate
it.
cleanser.
Please.
All right. Well, Locke's back on the mainland, trying to convince everybody to return to the island. This might seem a waste of time since everybody just got back last episode. But no, this is a flashback story and you're a fool to think otherwise. Nevertheless, Locke is struggling to convince people. Saeed's busy building torturing facilities for the homeless. Hurley's got a busy schedule of being crazy. Walt needs to hang out with his schoolmates, being a lot larger than he was 3 years ago, and so forth. So, furious, he gets into a car crash. He wakes up in a hospital where the doc gives him a piece of his mind. Locke, he says, you're a stupid, deluded, doddering old man. You're not special, you're nothing. Nobody likes you. Why don't you go hang yourself but be interrupted by Ben, who talks you out of suicide so he can murder you himself? So clearly the doc has lost none of his legendary bedside manner. There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dan. I mean, can I ask you just memories of watching this and watching John Locke fight, being...
Yeah, I think my strongest memory is the just the very end where Ben, like, what is Ben doing? Why is Ben talking him down? Like, you go, oh, thank God Ben's here to talk him out of this and everything's going to be all right. And a second later, Ben's strangling him. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. Well, we knew he had to die and that he would end up in that casket. We just didn't know how. So in this episode, we've got Ilana and Caesar who were there with him. And Alana is telling Caesar that there's a man on the beach who was not on the plane. And there's there's Locke. He's under a blanket. And Caesar says, "My name is Caesar. What's yours?" And he says, "My name is John Locke." And then he eats the mango and says, "This is the best mango I've ever eaten." And I'm wondering, like, is this an adjustment period for the Man in Black
Presumably.
as he takes a new form? Has he got a
Yeah.
mix of old memories and things? Because it's almost like he hasn't been around when
Yeah.
I think he has been. So if you were to nitpick, there's opportunities here. There's not much on the island stuff. It's basically off the island.
Yeah.
John arrives in Tunisia after turning the donkey wheel. Matthew Abaddon watches him get his leg snapped back into place, and then
Ouch.
Widmore comes to him and he's very, very genuine. He's at his bedside and he says, "It's nice to see you again. I met you when I was 17.
Mm.
You look exactly the same." And Locke asks him, "How long has it been since we last saw each other?" Or I said, Widmore asks him, and he says, "It's been 4 days
Yeah.
since I last met you." So what's funny is that Widmore assumes that Locke has been exiled in the same way that Widmore also was by, some kind of Ben scheme. He's like, "Oh, Ben, got you as well, did he?" And he's like, "No, but Ben had already left. I left on my own accord."
Yeah.
Again, this man. It was the Man in Black that told him to leave. And so I believe what happens is that when he's holding onto the rope and he goes down into the well and breaks his leg, there's a flash of light.
Mm.
3 years pass. So when he sees Christian, it hasn't just it's kind of moved 3 years. So when he goes and moves the donkey wheel,
Yeah.
that's why he's just missed 3 years of everybody's Oceanic 6
Yes.
existence. And he gets the Jeremy Bentham passport, and Widmore says, "Your parents had a sense of humor when they named you. Why can't I?" As he gets another philosopher's name. And Widmore says he's been keeping tabs on everyone so that John can track them down. Widmore says, "I wouldn't mention my name. Can't imagine what they think of me after all Ben's lies." Trying to place the blame on each other. And Locke says, "How do I know you're not the one who's lying? I haven't tried to kill you yet."
Yeah.
Like Ben would. And Locke says, "What makes you think I'm so special?" And Widmore says, "Because you are." But Widmore thinks he's special because he walked into his camp
because
on multiple occasions and says, "I will be your leader." And then I guess the same goes for Eloise.
Mm.
And the same goes for Ben, because I assume Ben grows up being told stories of the famous John Locke by Richard, that this man will one day arrive. And for Ben, he's just grown cancer, and he's the miracle man who's arrived. So he's like, "I can't have this."
Yeah, no good.
So is he special? Is he not special? Is he only special because the Man in Black kind of pushed all of these things into existence? Locke meets Mr. Abaddon and gives him a "Hang on, do I know you?" Which of course he does from when he had broken his back. And then of course Abaddon brings out the wheelchair. "John, you're gonna have to get back into the chair.
Yeah.
Whenever you're on the island, things are great. Whenever you're off the island, they suck." And then begins the mission. The whole world thinks you're dead. What do you want to do first? And so they go to Santo Domingo. I'm wondering, when they flew, do you reckon he watched a movie on the plane? Been away for a while, right?
Yeah. He watched Dude, Where's My Car?
So the Saeed interaction, which I think is perfect, right? Where else would he be, this man, after being a hitman for 2 years, meeting Nadia, having this wonderful relationship with her, and then she dies, and so of course he's out in the middle of nowhere.
Jacob distracts everybody. Yeah.
Yes. So he's out there building houses for the needy, and he says Ben manipulated Syed for 2 years, and asks Locke, "Who is manipulating you?" And of course it's Widmore.
Yeah.
Widmore's lying to him. He just wants to get back to the island. So that's mission fail. Then he sees Walt, which I thought was quite a sweet moment. And Locke says, "You don't seem surprised to see me." And he's like, "Well, I've been having dreams about you. You were on the island wearing a suit. People are all around you and they all want to hurt you." Isn't that incredible? Like it's not Locke, but it's Locke. So this one's not even a fail. He just can't ask him. He just
Yeah.
can't ask him to kind of
To
go
do
back
it. Yeah.
there. Yeah, he said, boy's been through enough. He just wanted to make sure he was okay. And then Hurley, who thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, so you didn't make it, huh? And then when Locke's like, no, I'm here. He says, excuse me, am I talking to a dude in a wheelchair right now? And then he starts to freak out. He's like, be careful, we're being watched. And he's like, oh, that guy, no, he's with me, it's fine. And then Hurley runs off. He's, no, thank you. Dunce one of that. Mission fail. Abaddon's like, you're 3-0. You need to step up your game, mate. So and then they talk about how when he was an orderly, he said, I can help people get where they need to be. You know, that's essentially what he did. He pushed him
Yeah.
onto the walkabout. So they try for Kate. She says, you made yourself pretty clear that everyone on the island is going to die if we don't all go back. And the answer is no. She says, I think about how desperate you were to stay on that island. And then I realized it was all because you didn't love anybody. And Locke says, that's not true. He mentions Helen and explains how he was angry and obsessed. And that's why it all fell apart. And then she says, look how far you've come. Mission fail. So he demands to see Helen. We learn that Helen had died in 2006. That was never meant to be. Locke says we could have been together, and Abaddon says your path is back to the island. It's inevitable. Then Abaddon gets shot dead in the street.
Yep.
Locke drives off, gets into a nasty accident, which leads him to Jack, who was sitting there well on his way to a breakdown.
Yep.
Not quite there yet. Not quite there.
Not far off though.
No. And he says, what are you doing here? Locke says, we have to go back. We have to go back. They talk about destiny. Jack says, destiny. How many times are you going to say it to me? You being brought into my hospital isn't fate. It's probability. Jack saw the island move. Still resistant, right?
Yeah.
They're still nagging away
That's
at him.
Jack.
Yeah. Locke says, they don't want me to get back because I'm important. I'm special. And Jack says, maybe there is nothing important about you at all. Maybe you're just a lonely old man that crashed on an island. That's it. It's dark.
Yeah.
Then
I
Locke
think that's what
says-
I was paraphrasing in the review.
Locke says, your father says hello. The man who told me to move the island told me to tell my son I said hello, which is so messed up, right? Like that, again, he knows what he's doing, that man in black. He says, you're the only one who can help me. You're supposed to help me. And Jack says, leave me alone and leave the rest of them alone. Mission fail. That is it. So, of course, all that's left for Locke to do here is he's failed. He's let everyone down. So he writes the suicide note and he prepares to hang himself. And I need to say, like, Terry O'Quinn in all of this is everything he does with his face. It wears the whole thing. He's so good. Ben enters and says, what do you want from me? Is what Locke says to him. And he tells John that Widmore used Locke. He's the whole reason why Ben moved the island is for Locke, and Widmore is using Locke to get back to the island. It's the only way that he can get back. So it's true. He's Locke was fooled again. And the reason Ben needs to do this is to keep Widmore away so that Locke can lead. He's been very supportive of him. If anything happens to you, you have no idea how important you are. Locke says, there's no helping me. I am a failure. I can't lead anyone. And he's like, Jack booked a ticket, which I think is a lie because Jack is always booking tickets.
Yeah.
Jack is always on a plane. He booked a flight to Sydney. Whatever you said, it worked. It didn't work. He always books a flight to Sydney. John, you can't die. You've got too much work to do. Ben helps him down. And he's like, come on, you haven't seen everyone. You haven't seen Sun. And then he's like, well, I saw Jin and Jin made me promise. And I think that's first little part of where maybe Ben gets the idea because he's like, well, I've got leverage on Kate, right? Because of the Aaron thing and the DNA lawyers. I've got leverage on Saeed because he was a murderer. I can get Hurley anytime I want. And then the ring coming from Jin off of Locke would help convince Sun. But even this is a fool's errand for Ben. He thinks he's doing the right thing here, but he's not. So Locke even thanks Ben for helping him down. And then when Locke mentions Eloise Hawking, Ben says that he knows her, and then that is when he proceeds to strangle John Locke until he is dead. And I think that was the last piece, the mention of Eloise, that she was here. So he's like, okay, I don't need this guy anymore. Everybody is waiting for John Locke. If we go back together, John Locke's the leader. I'm not the leader. And then he covers up the crime. And he says, "I'll miss you, John. I really will." And that's basically the episode. We go back to the island. Caesar is reading an old Dharma file, and Locke walks in and gives him about 4 seasons worth of intel in like 2 sentences. And he's like, if Caesar wants to know what happened to the big guy with the curly hair who was sitting next to him on the plane, and Locke says, "I think I know how I came to be here." And then Caesar shows him to the injured people from the crash, and there is Ben. And Locke says, "That's the man who killed me." So that is my number one. When I was rewatching it, I was just like, "Yes, this feels like the axis of John Locke's story."
Yep.
For me, and that is what I will always what I will always be thinking about whenever I ponder
I
this
should have
show.
guessed that one. I'm annoyed I didn't guess that one. I knew I sensed it would be Locke, and of course it should be when Locke dies. Well, what else would it be? Yeah.
That is the most depressing part of the entire series. So yes, so that's it. That's another.
We're done.
That's another list in the bin. I will be sharing a collage that I have on my wall where I very crazily mapped out about 50 different episodes of the show and tried to rank them in post-it notes. So I will share that with you, Dan, and everybody else that's been listening.
Yeah. So I think that's it, right? We're done.
Any final words, Dan? A shout out to Fiona. Thank you for being a big part of the show.
Yes.
Thank you for Tom again for talking. I guess anyone that
wrote
out,
in or contacted us, that was great. Much appreciated.
Emailed us. Yes. Special shout out to my partner Marina, who helped deal with the little one while I got to sit here for hours each week and talk to you about Lost, Dan. So
yes.
Thank you to her.
And of course, my partner Kat let me use the Zoom that she pays for, which means we can record properly most times. Very
thank
useful.
you, Kat. And thank you to you, Dan, for
it's been great. Thank you
for tweeting about the Constant,
initiating my crazy opinions. That's
right, yeah, and for reaching out while I was out and about at the Melbourne Zoo, and I went, "Oh, that sounds like an interesting idea. I think I'm in." So thank you. And yeah, the last thing I wanted to say now, Dan, do you remember the last thing that you ever wrote about Lost? Do you remember what it was? Because if I take your blog at face value, and you've obviously read out what you had written for the end, I thought it was really poetic, and I made note of it because I figured that's probably the last thing you ever wrote.
Okay. I don't remember.
So I figured I'd share it here. It was rot roll.
Perfect. Thank you for listening to Lost Within Lost. No, we weren't dead the whole time. If you've subscribed to our feeds, then please stay subscribed, just in case we drop something new at some point. You never know. And if you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Anyway, thanks for listening. Namaste.
I'm hard to edit around, aren't I? Because I talk too much.
No, you're very easy to edit around. I've just been pretty much letting you go.
Oh no! All right,
chopped out the odd thing, but not much.
I'm assuming you guys. Yeah, did you chop out the bit where I said people should take heroin? I was just thinking about that earlier. I was like,
no, we left that in.
I was very pro heroin that day, which I don't think I really meant to be.
Yes,
it was just like in comparison to other drugs, not like everyone should go out and get on the nod. But anyway,